Go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, August 12th meeting of the Radnor Township Board of Commissioners. Will everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, and thank everyone for being here this evening on a beautiful August evening. I just wanted to quickly commend our staff and our staff in the community programming, as well as our public works staff and everyone who was involved with the night at the ballpark. I think it was a great night. I know Commissioner Abel was there, and it really it was a fabulous and a fun night. So congratulations to everyone on a job well done that night. I'm sorry? Sure, do you want to say that? Oh, go ahead, Sean.
Also, I know that there were 2 book readings, several, at least at Clem-McCrone Park. There were several throughout the township that the police were involved in. So they were very successful, and I'd like to say thank you for them for coming out and meeting some of the residents. Thanks.
Anyone have anything else? All right. Then I will make notice that we met in executive session directly preceding this meeting. Everyone was present with the exception of Commissioner Abel. I will move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they'd like to pull this evening?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I would like to pull letter E, and I would like to pull letter J.
All right. And I will be pulling item K. So may I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? There isn't anything anyone, oh, I'm sorry. Is there anything staff needs to pull? Okay, anything that the public would like to pull from the consent agenda? Okay. May I get a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items E, J, and K?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, please indicate. All right. All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, item E, Commissioner Booker.
I just wondering why we're authorizing a maintenance agreement for the traffic signal, which is some long period or some period away from even being constructed. So why do we have this on there?
Hi, Commissioner. The reason for that is for Penn Medicine to construct this and get its signal permit and the other permits it needs to do so. PennDOT requires that the TE 160 be authorized by the township.
So authorizing it, is that a commitment for the maintenance? Are we signing off on a maintenance agreement, or are we authorizing a form to be filled out?
You are signing off on a maintenance agreement. The Radnor Township, as do all townships in the state of Pennsylvania, we own and operate all flashing signals. So any signal that goes up, PennDOT requires the TE 160. We've done this for many of our signals, as well as there was no TE 160 for the flashing curve sign on Conestoga, and PennDOT said, hey folks, you need to do that. So once this is up and through its 1-year maintenance period or 18-month maintenance period, the township will be responsible for maintenance as we are for all our signalized intersections.
Isn't it early to be signing off on this, though? I mean, why do they need that for? They need it for their permit, I guess, but isn't it designed, or, I mean, we could do this in September, couldn't we?
It's PennDOT's rule that they won't go through this permitting process without the township's commitment for future maintenance.
Okay. The township manager, Mr. Zinkowski, informed me about a subsurface failure we had at the that intersection of Raider Road, near Raider Road actually further down from Raider Road, with respect to underground work by a utility, PECO, I believe. Does that have anything to do with this at all, or is that something that we need to be aware of that impacts on this agreement?
No, sir, there are two separate incidents that occurred. Henkels and McCoy, a contractor for PECO, their ditch was compromised by the heavy rains we received that night, and that's how that opened up. It's probably 100 or 200 yards away from that intersection. There are two very different topics.
All right, I do know Mr. Henkel there, so I'll put a call in. Thank you very much.
All right, Commissioner Booker, do you want to make a motion to approve? All right, can I get a motion to approve item E, please?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item J, Commissioner Booker.
Resolution 2019-84, awarding the design plans bidding, wait, no, that's I. Letter J, waiver request, section 24522, groundwater recharge, 515 Brookside Avenue. This, again, I hope the applicants here and their engineer can explain what they're doing, but this, once again, is a waiver of our stormwater requirement for infiltration of groundwater in conjunction with construction. And again, this is a serious issue. We need to enforce our code to infiltrate stormwater and not just to have it run off at a different pace than it did. So is the applicant here to go through?
Yes, Mr. Maurice Weintraub, the applicant's architect, is here with a presentation.
Can you give me a second, please?
Do you need some help? All right. Ian, do we have
I
a?
needed to go up there, but otherwise I think I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ian.
Okay, let's see. Slideshow, where is that? I'm mostly used to my computer. Just go through it. Okay. Thank you.
It's a PDF.
Yeah, yes. Okay, my clients, Angela Shen and Daniel Takevman, bought this house last August, 2018, and I don't know if you guys remember, but on August 13th of that date, there was a tremendous storm event. There was no disclosure in the purchase documents about any flooding issues with the property, which I find incredibly hard to believe. Just to give you a familiarity, I'm sure everybody's familiar with this property. It's the one that has the pergola with the wisteria. And it's called Hollybrook. It's although it's not on any register of sorts, it is a historical structure. It was published in the November 1909 issue of Philadelphia Suburban Home. This is the house. There's a kind of a companion house right next door. Here's just a couple of pictures from that article. It's interesting to note on Orchard Way. There used to be this stone gate. Right now, just the lower portions of that gate exist, but as you can see, there used to be a wooden boardwalk with a pergola that led down the opposite side of the stream and eventually led to a bridge, which is seen here. And here's back toward Orchard Lane, where you approach the companion properties. There's a picture of the living room. There's a picture of the house, primarily here to point out how of the time this plan is. So if you look at it, it's very unusual in the way of the bedrooms and the living space. If you look at the front entry here, where you approach from the stream, you entered this long, narrow hallway, which is quite unusual. It was mostly about, I guess, a vacation during the summer. And you'd move through the house, and these two rooms were the public rooms that opened to this porch. So now that's all reversed. You don't enter the house from the stream side, you enter it from Brookside Avenue. As part of the grading permit application, Mominy came in and did a survey for us locating the BFE. It was in Zone A, so Dave Fiorello established that BFE, and that shows that. And this also part of the grading permit is kind of pulling away some of the engineering, so to speak, to cull out the more specific information. So beyond here is the BFE. Here is the portion of the property that isn't. This is where, when we applied for the grading permit, we presumed the seepage bed might go, and it's where we did the perk test. Moving on, this was
What is BFE?
base flood elevation. Who asked that? Oh, I'm sorry. Base flood elevation. So this is a quick diagram which shows those portions of impervious that we're proposing to pull away. And then this is what we're proposing to put back. The primary piece that we're looking to add of all things is a mudroom. Right now, everybody enters one portion at the house. It's supposed to be one of the nicest entries, but it's kind of a mudroom. So they're simply looking to fill out this quadrant. As well, they're looking, a previous owner, not historical, put this entry on here, which we did not like. And the idea is to actually move the entry down to here around this enclosed porch, and then have kind of a side entry. So there's trying to be some separation between the formal and informal entry. All the guests end up going to the back door. It's a frequent problem with houses, but we're trying to alleviate this in this design. Here are some other images. I don't know that they're pertinent right now. This is part of the impervious calculations that we submitted to the township, showing that we're talking about taking away 1,079 square feet and putting back 1,337 for a total change of 258 square feet. And here you can see this is the area that's going to be removed, the area that's going to be added, about 258 square feet. This is a picture of the perk test, and here's the perk test report, and as you can see, it's not quite what we hoped for. A run rate of 0. As well, severe drainage restrictions throughout profile. Basically, that adds up to 0 run rate. This is basically the stormwater districts. We're in Zone A. Here's a close-up of that. Here's showing approximately the location of Angela and Dan's house. You'll see also here there's kind of a double lot. It is actually one lot, but most of the house is pushed to one side, and if they wanted to, they could actually subdivide it. They probably couldn't do this addition that they want to do and make it 2 properties. They're choosing not to do that, and the intent is to keep it. I guess let me go back real quick, just one other thing to say. If you look in this engineer survey by Mominy, there's actually a storm water inlet here and here. And that actually travels through a pipe that is on that, it's not a property line, but one point where these 2 lots came together. There's nothing in the deed that talks about this pipe. It's a 2-foot pipe. At times, it is overwhelmed. Certainly on that August 13th event, it was overwhelmed. So
So where does that pipe discharge? Which way is it flowing?
it flows right into the stream. It's a 2-foot pipe that flows right into the stream. Right where this cursor is, this is the stream coming through. So it comes out right here, and you can actually see the line here from across the street. Comes up here. There's a manhole here. With some discussions, there might be plans for addressing issues in that location, and I think my client is open to discussion as the township begins to hopefully look at that area and how it might be achieved. I think they're willing to work with the township to help their problem, help its problem. How that might play out, I don't know, but it's something that they're willing to do. I guess, here we go. Let's get through the perk, and then this is the zone. This is a USGS map, the Valley Forge quadrant. Zooming into this area where the house is, one can see how the contours flow. So here's their house. And right here, I'm doing a general sketch of how the water flows. So this is the intersection of Ivan and Brook. Well, is that Brook or Church? I'm sorry. And Conestoga. So all the water from that high point actually washes down through this area and ultimately goes across their property. This is a picture of their property on August 13th of last year. So the question is, these people without disclosure purchased this house. They want to add a mudroom and actually a back terrace. I didn't get to that, I will. They are receiving the burden of many acres of water that comes through. So the hope is that this kind of de minimis addition we're hoping to do isn't going to impact the big picture per se, given what they're dealing with. This is a kind of sketch of what's existing. This is actually is a kitchen. The previous owner renovated some of the help portions of the building from the early 1900s and made it into a more modern day kitchen. They're looking to expand some of that as well. But you can see basically we're looking to infill this area. So I'll just flip back and forth so everybody can look. So what you're basically seeing is pulling out this surface to this surface and then extending this porch like this. It's trying to keep in character with the house as much as we can. And then in the back, there's an existing deck. And just the way it works, code requires railing, so the railing actually becomes an obstruction for them to look at one of their most beautiful views back to the stream and so forth. So we came up with this idea of, some people call it a ha-ha wall. So it's not a retaining wall that's vertical. It's kind of stacked boulders. It's at an angle. Let me jump ahead. These are some examples. They don't actually embody exactly what we were hoping to do, but the idea is there. It's a sloped wall. It wouldn't need the rail. We want to put plantings along the edge. So in other words, this is all grass and plantings, and there would be planting in these rocks, and then there would be a terrace area that would be there. And there's the house now. And I guess ultimately, we're hoping that we can do this small addition and seek a waiver for the recharge.
Well, it looks great. Excellent discussion, excellent review.
But
and the architectural work, excellent, and the presentation was very good. Really understood exactly what you're doing here.
Great.
So absolutely understand and empathize and really recognize what the issues are. But your picture of the flooding is the issue. There is a huge problem, as you know, and they're at the bottom. And what we see more and more is the township is now on the hook. Township is responsible for the flooding because we have been approving. Everybody wants just a few more square feet, and this is where we are with it. And it happened in August. It'll happen again.
That was a big event.
It will happen again. This is going to happen again.
Yeah.
I completely understand the issue. What I would, and you haven't been here. I make this point. I've made it 100 times.
I've heard.
If we, I recognize that you want a waiver, and this board has granted a waiver every single time it's been requested, and I voted against it every single time. Okay. We should change so that everybody gets the waiver. We shouldn't have, we shouldn't worry about it either. We're going to have our ordinance, and we're going to make it have it do what we wanted it to do, or we're going to let everybody have the same benefit. That's my view. So as it stands, I understand. I think it's a bad idea to add more impervious, even though there's a reduction, and I think it's a bad idea to add more impervious in that site. I think there's going to be flooding, and I think that somebody will come back to the township and say, the township, you should have done something. And the first thing I think that I can do is to not approve more impervious surface. And I think that's the right way to go. If we're going to improve it here, we should approve it for everybody. So again, I appreciate your effort here, and I think you did probably one of the best that we've seen, so thank you.
Can I comment to that, or is that?
Sure,
No,
you
no,
could
no,
comment.
please.
Won't make any difference,
It
but
won't
go
make
ahead.
any difference. Okay, I think I was warned about you, but that's fine. That's fine. I think, with all due respect to your comment, I think just to go to extreme, it's not like I'm coming here or my client's requesting to asphalt the site. It's not like we're requesting to knock down the house and put up a huge house. We're asking for something that's modest and just, it won't have that impact. So I agree with the notion of your intent.
It'll make it a little bit worse.
Well, the other thing is, if you go back to this, if you look at this illustration here, and you see that their house is right on the stream, right? They bought this house last year, no disclosure. I don't even know how one addresses that issue in the bigger picture, because it just seems unconscionable that somebody, and what is my client going to do at this point? Are they going to go back and say, we want our money back? I don't think that's possible. So if you look, one of the intent of the stormwater is not to pass your water on to anyone else, right? So they're taking the water of a significant amount of the township, and it's passing through their site. They have pipes that go through their site where there's no easement. I'm sure you guys can kind of eminent domain or whatever to fix the pipe. They're willing to work with you if part of the bigger picture plan calls for.
Well, hold on. Do you think that the pipe is inoperable right now?
No, it's absolutely. I've seen it operate.
So it does operate. Okay.
I've been on the site
All right,
in
that's-
the morning when it's sunny out, and then there's a rain event, and I see this all happen. So anyway, I guess.
We understand each other.
But I understand what you're saying.
We've had hundreds of these, and everybody's making it a little bit worse. Meanwhile, we get more and more flooding. We had flooding again last week, and it's getting worse and worse. And the only people who can make a difference are right up here. I'm trying to lead that charge to make a difference, and nobody's followed me yet. But I'm going to continue to do that as long as I'm commissioner.
Well, I'm glad that we work from guidelines as opposed to rules maybe because.
Could I ask you,
Yes, absolutely.
But we have rules.
normally when someone comes in front of us requesting a waiver, they're proposing alternates. And this 300-year storm, because it's not a 100-year storm,
Yeah.
isn't really the issue. It's the everyday storm, the 10, the 20, the 30-year. So I didn't see anything in the package that described what compensatory measures you were taking for the infiltration issue.
Okay, so I thought about this, and speaking with, speaking with Dave Fiorelli and a couple other people, they said, well, there's a rainwater garden that you could propose, and there's also rain barrels that you can propose. And in all honesty, I didn't want to propose them because I don't think that they would impact this situation. That said, my client would be willing to put up rain barrels. I don't think the rainwater garden works in this scenario. So
Agree.
we would do the rain barrels, but you know, when you look at some of the pictures of the water moving through the site, you're going to fill up a rain barrel in like 2 seconds. So it just
Well,
seems-
again, that storm, I mean, the storm we had about a week ago,
Yeah,
you don't stand a chance. We didn't design for that.
yeah.
And 200 more square feet would make zero difference.
That's what I believe, yes.
So I'm more concerned about the everyday storm and keeping that water, your water on your site as long as possible.
Well, okay. Would, you tell me.
Well, I
Like
mean,
said,
I think your point is if it's going to be flooded, you're not going to keep any water on the site. It's going
Well, I
to.
mean, you could keep
Let's,
the
all right,
barrel
let's,
over-
why don't we, Commissioner Nagel, you're suggesting that perhaps we approve this with the condition of some rain barrels. Mr. Norsini, what do you think of that, that option?
I think that would be a valid option. So our ordinance does not recognize removed impervious. It's all just based on no. So you have roughly 1,000+ square feet. The ordinance requires a pit that could take 1 inch of rain from that. So I think if the applicant did a combination, it's not going to be the same, but if they did a combination of rain barrels and a rain garden, that would be some compensatory measure to help offset what is not going. If you look at the net increase of 258, it's very small.
So we could go ahead and approve this with those conditions, with the
Condition is they
condition.
work with plant staff, with the engineer, to establish compensatory measures.
So would that be Laura Stone from Gannett Fleming? Or
No, it worked with
What do you mean?
Steve.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Is there any other commissioner comment to this item? All right, then I believe, so I believe what is on the floor is the, so can I get a motion to approve the waiver request, section 2045-22, groundwater recharge at 515 Brookside Avenue, with the amendment that we would, that the owners and the architects would work with the staff in order to make a plan for a compensatory,
Absolutely.
okay. So. Second. All right, then I'm going to go out and call the vote. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-2. All right.
No, 5-3.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, Jake, I'm sorry. Okay, motion passes 4-3. All right, so you will work with Steve, and you guys will come to an agreement on what those compensations will look like.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great.
I
Thank
agree with
you.
you. It's going to look much better without that rain garden, but
Whatever, Whatever you
you'll
guys
have to
want,
put,
that's not an issue.
yeah, they'll put something in.
just want to do common sense. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. All right, we'll move on to item K. I pulled item K, Resolution 2019-75, award of the Wayne Business Overlay District Paving and Tree Planting Project to Gessler Construction in the amount of $524,299. I completely support this resolution. This was part of the bond that we've put forth. But I have had a resident that has come forward and raised some concerns around the handicap parking in the Wayne Business District. And I know that our police, the staff traffic, Lieutenant Dietrich, you guys are looking into this. And I know Mr. Nosini, you made some consideration around this. I think if we're going to be doing some of this work, that it might behoove us to take a look at the handicap parking situation in the business district. So,
Yes, Madam President, we can work with staff traffic. They meet next week. We can address this through a change order with the contractor, however we move forward.
it'll be all right for us to go ahead and approve that while you guys concurrently work on what that plan might look like.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the issue that they're concerned about? There's plenty of handicap spaces in Wayne.
I think the concern is not so, or at least what I was told was that the concern is not so much the number of parking spots, but their location. If you could get them closer to the crosswalk, the concept is it would be easier for the people who need them to get to where they need to go, as opposed to shoehorning them in way at the bottom, particularly because it's really tough to back out down there.
Well, I think, keeping the main thing is that I'm concerned with. And we all know the Wayne Business Overlay District can use some long-needed sprucing up, and we want our business district to be as aesthetically pleasing and as nice an area as economic conditions and prudence can support. So I'm ready to move forward with it. I don't know about the handicap parking spot, but I feel comfortable we have enough of them. So I hate to add money to it already with a change order, but perhaps you can get a deduction in this change order. Maybe? Probably not, it sounds like.
My recommendation, to the Board of Commissioners would be, we're requesting that this be awarded, and the handicap spot is somewhat of a separate issue. It can't be addressed tonight because we don't know where it will go and we don't know a price. So my request, my suggestion and recommendation is to award the contract. Commissioner Booker hit all the points. We need to get that cleaned up, get this project cleaned up, get it in, get it done, make everything nice and clean. And we will address, if however it comes out, an ADA compliant handicap spot or wherever needed.
Then I will go ahead and make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-75, award of the Wayne Business Overlay District paving and tree planting project.
Second.
Gessler Construction.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. 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 Oh. Do we have public comment on consent? This is a consent item. Sarah, would you like to say something? Okay. All right. Did we take all those in favor? Please indicate by saying aye. 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 All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right. Thank you all. We will move on to public participation.
Sarah Pilling, 29 Garrett Avenue. I'd like to first start by thanking the township for the two most important phone calls probably in my life, so that the tree, which had split in half and was threatening to fall on my house, was removed by Radnor House. I had been told by Asplin, Pico, and the township that I probably ought to move out, because if the other half of the tree went, my house would be crushed. So I really appreciate the township making two phone calls, which resulted in somebody else removing my trees, which is in line with my question for the Wayne Business Overlay District is, have the species of trees been chosen, and if so, what? And I'll ask the same question of the Morris Road as to what species of trees are being chosen.
Ms. Pilling, so for the Wayne Business Overlay District project, a local registered landscape architect, Jonathan Alderson, who comes out of Wayne, was gracious enough to pro bono provide our tree planting list. That's what went out in the bid. I can't tell you all the various species. I can send you the list. It's very extensive. It's multicultured. As far as Morris Road, we had 3 meetings with the resident, with the commissioner, with the manager, with the arborist. We have placards of the trees. Again, it will not be a monoculture. Everybody had a chance to look at those trees. If you're under the wires, you get a certain tree. If you're not, you get a different tree.
That's what I wanted to know, to be sure we weren't planting monocultures. Thank you.
And the Shade Tree Commission has been involved with this as well, so. Any other public comment?
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I am good. How are you? Did you dry out? Just to let you two know, we do have your video that you wanted to show is queued up and ready to go.
Oh, it is?
If you'd
Great.
like to show that.
I don't know how to, can we show it? Well, first of all, tell me who it is.
Well, let me start off by thanking everyone for allowing us 5 minutes. Start the clock. My name is Tom Heckman. I'm here with my wife, Mary Jo Ashenfelder Heckman. We live at 1.5 Earls Lane, which is just where Earls Lane and Sawmill Road come together. And most importantly, we're downstream from the Earls Lake Dam and what used to be the Summit Hill Dam. The reason that we're here tonight, and yes, there's been a lot of rain, a lot of people have had rain situations, but we've got a terrible crisis going on where the flow of the water has been changed so much that it's bombarding our house. It's beating against the foundation of our house, which I believe you will see in this video. We've also distributed photographs. So why don't we
Go ahead, let's just take a
roll them if you wish.
Do we have to do something? It's all right. You may have all seen it. We saw, what do we do? Press something?
Nope.
Sorry. Yeah, that's very short. We're very technically challenged.
Okay, so the building in the background is our house, the red place. Look what's going towards our house.
This is the site of the breach of the Summit Hill Dam. And when they breached the dam, they've now created a chute. It actually has changed the water flow. And if you see, it looks like a chute, and it's now shooting right towards our house at an accelerated rate of speed. And Tom has lived on this property since 1967. And we know there's a lot of water, but we've never had this much water. We sent this video to 2 friends of ours who have worked for the DEP formerly. They're both geologists. They think that something upstream has occurred, and we've got 2 solutions here. We're not going to beat the issue of the dam, Earls Lake Dam, but that dam, we went there today, and again, the spillway, the water is right up to the top of the spillway. I don't know if this would work. I don't know if it would work, but if we could lower that dam, it's been under DEP mandate to lower the water level 18 inches, and I think historically in the past, the water level has been lowered. I think based on this video, we need to try it. And can Radnor Township, do we have legal recourse as a township to go after Green Country just to get the lake lowered? Because you're going to have problems, and you did have problems on the road at the culvert at Earls Lake and Sawmill. So I think it's worth a try, but somebody has to legally enforce that. We're going to lose our house, I think. Forget the Earls Lake Dam. This picture is going to show you. This is a microcosm of what is going to happen if you take the Earls Lake Dam down. Lisa showed up. She took a walk, and thank you for that. She's the only person that came and did a site check. And she said to me, so they tore the Summit Hill Dam down so that your houses wouldn't flood. And she said, but now your houses are flooding. And she said, is that what might happen at Earls Lake? And yeah, it might happen there, but we don't know that. That's the thing. So go ahead, Tom. Well, there's one more video, I think. I don't know how to do it.
I don't know how to do it either.
It's all right. That tells the story.
So the Earls Lake Dam is one situation. The second situation is the Summit Hill Dam, which is the much smaller dam, and that had maybe an acre's worth of water behind it.
If you go to the first picture in your packet, this is now a picture of the site of the breach of the Summit Hill Dam. It's been totally destroyed on this last flood. Right, go ahead, Tom. Sorry, I want you to describe it.
Use your 5 minutes wisely.
5 minutes, right. Okay, good. So at any rate, the Summit Hill Dam was breached remediated, et cetera. It hasn't worked. The water flow most recently has carried construction materials, broken pieces of concrete, and all the stonework and the underlying mesh work to stabilize the situation. It's flowed downstream. I've got it in my backyard. It hasn't worked. We would like to know who owns that property. We understand it was formerly owned by David D'Agostino, but perhaps it's been lost to a bank in some sort of a financial upset. Does Radnor Township know who owns that property? Because we can't go on the property to fix it. We don't own it. Who does? Does Radnor Township know this?
And there's a couple more pictures. I'm going to ask you to go to one more picture towards the end. But we, on our own volition, we have spent $12,000 to date. We delivered 60,000 pounds of rock at our own expense to the back of our house after the June flood. We delivered boulders that weigh 1,000 pounds each for a total of 60,000 pounds. We're having another truckload of boulders brought in this week because the water breached the top of these boulders, and we've put them against, we cannot move any earth or dirt under DEP regulation to protect our house and rebuild the channel, but we've got to put more rocks to shore up the back of our house. We're willing to put, we've got skin in the game, we're willing to spend some money here, but somebody has to help us. Can Radnor legally enforce make green country, lower that township? Lower of the lake, because this is very serious. We're packing things up in our house. I'm not exaggerating. We've moved everything out of our garages. My husband said to me, pack up your good china. He said, the back end of our house is going to go and you're going to lose everything. It's not a nice way to live.
It's a terrible way to live, but we're
Right.
respectful of our opportunity to be here tonight, and we're probably over the 5 minutes.
We are, but next to us at number 1 is a young married couple with a baby. Their parents were there. They were out of town, and the people are there with this baby, and they're saying to us what we should do. What should we do? And I don't know what to tell them. You know, do we evacuate?
So we have on the agenda this evening, we're going to be talking about the dam. So if you two want to stay, we'll be discussing it. We have the staff. You know, our staff has been really engaged and involved in this. So we'll be having a little more extensive discussion.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you all very much.
And
All
again,
right.
though, just so we're clear, there are 2 dams. There's the Summit Hill and the Earls Lake Dam. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Thank you both very much for being here. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm James, your ward. Thank
Yeah.
you for taking the emails. I requested the handicap parking spot. We have a son with disabilities, so we'd like to just see if we could get one closer to the crosswalk. There's one up by the pub, but I think that's it on North Wayne Avenue. So that's it. Hopefully somebody will do something.
Great. Thank you, James.
you.
And you're going to be working with the police on
Yeah.
that? Yep. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, James. Any other public comment this evening? Good evening.
Good evening. Laura Reinhardt, Ward 7. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Garrett Hill Rosemont Parade. Just here to say a quick thank you to everyone, to Bob and the staff and the police and the commissioners. Last month we had the 4th of July parade. We have a dedicated group of people who work hard to put on the parade and the party in Clemacrone Park every year. It is truly a community event. People who have moved away from Garrett Hill come back year after year for the parade and the party. This year we had about 2,000 people. We passed out, I think, close to 1,500 hot dogs. And it was very, very hot, but I think that overall it was a success. So overall, thank you very much. And thank you, Bob, and to the police and the whole staff. Thanks.
Thank you. Congratulations. It's your first time running it, right? Yes. Congratulations. Any other public comment this evening? Good evening.
Hey, good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Fantastic. My name is Art. Am I speaking to this okay? Is it picking up? Stand up? Okay. So, I was born and raised in Radnor. I really love this area. I think it's one of the most beautiful places on the planet. But I'm a little bit disheartened when I try to run in the township. I feel like we don't have enough bike lanes and sidewalks on a lot of different roads, like Darby Paoli Road, Bryn Mawr Avenue, Goshen Road, Malin Road. It's really quite dangerous when I feel like I'm running or biking there. And I was just wondering, is there anything we could do to maybe create more bike lanes or sidewalks on those roads?
So I think you're here at a good time this evening because we'll be talking about some trails. Steve?
So the Commissioner and to our resident, the Radnor Tap Trail, would basically, between off-road trail and on-road, share the lane, bike paths, things like that, would traverse the township from the Radnor Senior High and conceivably take you all the way down to Bryn Mawr Avenue. It does not address the roads you mentioned, Malin and so forth, but it does address a lot of the roads in between.
And
That's
what
a
about the
multi-
roads that I mentioned?
And there's
That's a
also a
multi-
Darby Paoli Trail that's on the agenda tonight.
Darby Paoli Trail. Okay, I didn't know about that. Thank you. And also, I think composting is a really great idea as well. I've lived in San Francisco for the past 2 years, and they do it there. And I mean, I just ate an apple here, and I feel guilty throwing it in the trash when it could easily be composted. I think it's good for the environment and would be just a great addition to the township. So, thank you all.
Thank you very much for being here. Any additional public comment this evening? All right, we will move on. Thank you all those who participated. Announcement of boards and commission vacancies. Commissioner Larkin.
Can I get a motion for the appointment of John Childs to the Rental Housing Appeals Board?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Could I get a motion for the appointment of Jamie Foreman to the Zoning Hearing Board?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 6-1. That leaves us with vacancies on the CARFAC, the Citizens Audit Review and Financial Advisory Committee, the Code Appeals Board. We no longer have vacancies on the Rental Housing Appeals Board or the Zoning Hearing Board, but we still have vacancies on the Shade Tree Commission and SWIMAC. If you're interested in any of those, please direct your emails to Mr. Zinkowski.
As far as CARFAC, we do have a quorum at this point, so we can have them start work. I do have a very adamant and someone who's ready to help out. Mr. Osterholm is here and wants to be a part of CARFAC and help out the township. And we do have a quorum at this point.
I thought I saw there was a meeting scheduled.
Was there a meeting scheduled? Bill's not here, but
Okay. Right.
there's nothing holding it up. So I would just advocate for having the folks start, and let's get them involved.
All right, sounds good. So I apologize, I should have announced this earlier this evening. Commissioner Larkin has to leave early this evening, and so I just wanted to move, we have an item in new business that we wanted to bring up. So I was going to just move new business quickly to the beginning because he needs to leave to head to the airport to catch a flight for a work trip, correct? So I just wanted to accommodate that this evening. So, and any other new business, we'll take regular new business in this section quickly. So tonight I'd like to bring up something I believe that is on all our minds, and that's gun violence. The gun violence, which appears to reach a fever pitch over the past several weeks, is touching the lives of all communities, ages, races, and socioeconomic status. Whether there is one victim or multiple victims in each incident, it is too many. As a community, we in Radnor have not been immune to this epidemic, and no community can afford to pretend it can't happen here. As a municipal entity in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we're limited to the tools at our disposal to combat these crimes. We can and will support our police by ensuring they have what they need to be present and positive forces in the community. I commend Superintendent Flanagan and his staff for all their efforts to better protect our schools, religious organizations, businesses, and township events. They're taking steps to train and equip themselves to best respond. And I commend my board colleagues who have acted on these recommendations to provide funding and support needed to ensure our police are ready if the unthinkable happens. This proactive approach to preparedness is something Radnor takes seriously and makes us leaders when it comes to a safe community. But the common denominator in all these events are and will be guns. State law precludes Radnor from enacting gun legislation. But recent events require us to support our first responders by calling on state lawmakers to enact sensible gun legislation. Currently, in the Pennsylvania House and Senate, there are multiple bills focused on sensible gun legislation introduced by both Republicans and Democrats. Many are bipartisan. In Act 1, 2, or all, any would help to get guns out of the hands of those who would do harm to others. Between universal background checks, red flag laws, safe gun storage, extreme risk protection orders, and firearm registration, there is legislation already proposed that would not challenge constitutionally protected gun ownership and help keep guns out of the hands of those who would do harm. So therefore, tonight, I'd like to ask for consensus of the board to direct the township manager to draft a letter urging our state legislators to bring forward for a vote, one, several, or all of the current legislation in both the House and the Senate intended to end the trend of gun violence. So I feel strongly that we are a leader. Radnor, I think, sets the tone for many issues and the way we react. I looked and investigated. There are currently 6 different bills sitting in the Senate, or actually 5 in the Senate and 1 in the House. Several have been introduced by, as I said, Democrats and Republicans. And I think that we as a board can agree the things that have happened in our township of late give us a unique opportunity to be leaders. So I'm just asking for a consensus of the board that we direct Mr. Zankowski to send a letter on our behalf asking the Senate and the Senate and House leadership, as well as the leadership of the Judiciary Committees for both the Senate and the House, to act on some, if not all, of these bills.
Lisa, point of order. Is this on the agenda?
No, I'm bringing up a new business. I said I was moving new business.
Well, we should, if you're going to have a resolution, especially something like this, you should have it at least listed out so people have notice. I'd move the table. I don't think it's proper to bring this for a vote tonight without notice to the public. At least notice to me. I had no idea that you were going to propose something like that.
One question. Would we get to see the letter before it goes out, or?
Absolutely.
So we would get to, so Bob and staff, they'll draft a letter, and then we would approve or not approve it to go out.
I have a
So-
motion.
so-
Fine with that.
Motion on the floor. Motion on the floor. No. Motion on the floor to table.
Okay, all right, a motion on the floor to table. Is there a second?
I'll actually second that.
All right, well then, there's a
But-
motion on the floor to table,
Okay.
and we'll need to take a vote. So there is a motion on the floor. I don't exactly know. I'm not really asking for a resolution. I'm just asking for a consensus. But
Then I guess you don't really need but I guess, so,
but I'm certainly open to, but I'm not asking for a resolution. All I'm asking for consensus for a letter, which Bob could draft and then bring back at our next meeting,
and then we
if
would
you want to
vote, and
review.
then there would be a vote whether or not to send that out. It's not that he just sends it right out without us seeing it.
No, yeah, we would not do that.
Okay, that's fine. I'm fine with it.
Rich, what's the problem with
The
that? We
problem-
get
the problem-
Rich, I agree. I'm all for it, but it's kind of a hot issue. I
Yeah,
don't
it's a
think we
hot
can just throw
issue.
that
It's
out there.
inappropriate to bring it up,
So.
but these issues, red flag laws, all of these things lead themselves to abuse. In the case of Parkland and other instances, there are laws on the books to stop these types of things from happening that people have not availed themselves of. Again, there's many points to this, and I'm happy to talk about them, but I just think you should give notice so that we could be prepared to discuss even a request for a consensus should have been given proper notice and an opportunity for all opinions to be heard. And I don't think that we've accomplished that the way you brought this up.
Well, it sounds like there's going to be that opportunity when we get the letter, and then people can.
Well,
of
no,
course-
there won't be,
I'm not
because
done,
it'll already
Rich.
be done. It'll be
So
done at that point.
No, it won't be. We're going to get to review the letter, and the public can then give feedback on that. I'm a little distressed that this is something that you want to tie up procedurally, but instead of getting bogged down with that, what I'd like briefly to say is I'm extremely concerned by the Lower Merion decision from the Commonwealth Court, which was approved tacitly by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which declined to issue aliquotter. which specifically takes away from townships the ability to act as a property owner would always be able to do in permitting or not permitting guns on township property. The result of which is we have no ability to regulate the possession, manufacture, sale, or use of firearms on township property, including this room where we're in right now, parks where children play. You could do the exact same thing at your house, of course. You could say, I don't want guns here, or I do want guns here, or whatever else, but we as a township don't have that authority. There is right now a Senate Bill 625. It has nothing to do with restricting the rights of gun owners. It has nothing to do with restricting gun ownership in general, or what kinds of guns you can buy, or even where you can carry them. It just gives the townships the authority to act in the same way that any other property owner could. It's an extremely common sense way for us to make some restrictions. There are a lot of other great opportunities to make improvements. That one is near and dear to my heart because I've written articles about it in the past. But there is definitely opportunity for improvement. And these are not single party issues. Some of these are co-sponsored by members of both parties. Some of these are exclusively Republican. Some of these are exclusively Democratic. We can jump on either side of the issue, but everybody is in favor of doing something. It's just tied up in committees in Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg. So the next step is for local municipalities who can't do anything at this level just to advocate with their representatives.
The township cannot preempt state, federal law. It's a constitutional issue. It's not common sense. What's common sense is the Constitution prevails. So
This is not a constitutional issue. The Supreme Court in Heller has been very clear that we have the right to do
if you want to discuss this, let's discuss it, but give notice so that everyone can prepare for the discussion. Don't spring it like you're doing right now with you two. That's inappropriate.
Okay, so would it be all right to have a letter and then bring it back and have this
No, it
discussion
wouldn't
then?
be. It wouldn't be until we can discuss the issue so that the board can make an informed decision on whether there's even consensus. With both of you just springing it on the public and the board in August, the one meeting we have, without any notice, there's not transparency and it's not appropriate.
So you're opposed to even drafting, not sending, you are opposed to drafting a letter issuing support for
I'm opposed to
measures
discussing
prevent gun violence.
I'm opposed to discussing the issue without due notice to the public and the board.
No, I'd like you to say what I just said, because I think that's what you're doing. I think you're supporting something that's extremely dangerous. And I
I'm
think you're doing it for
supporting the
entirely
Constitution.
personal
I'm
reasons.
supporting the people's right for transparency in government.
The
and
Supreme
for
Court
people
in
to
Heller has
understand
said that
what
this is
you're-
not a constitutional
All right,
issue.
okay, okay.
What you're trying to do here is just spring it
So-
on, spring it on the township in August. You're just trying to push something through, and it's inappropriate, and
So all
it's
we're
not
looking
it's not the
for,
right thing.
Rich, all we're looking for is some consensus to draft a letter, and then we can share it with everyone when we come back here in September, and we can have that conversation.
Let's have that conversation before we prepare any letter.
Well, aren't we having that conversation now?
No, we're not. There's not been notice. There hasn't been notice. It's not correct. It's inappropriate to bring this up, even for consensus, and without notice to the public.
Okay, understood.
Also, I would remind this board, since none of you except for me was on the board at the time, that Radnor Township was very close to passing a lost and stolen ordinance. However, it was determined that state law prohibited that under preemption.
That is another one of the amendments that's currently being considered that
Yes.
would change 6120 to
Yes.
permit it.
And those meetings, we filled the room, including folks from the gun advocacy groups, many of whom came in here with guns stuck in their hip, in their waistband. One guy's weapon fell out onto the floor while we were sitting here. It was very, very frightening. And the overwhelming sentiment of the board at that time was to pass that. So I think the best thing to do is let's get something on the agenda for September that we can have an open discussion and then get an endorsement out to our representatives and the governor to move forward on some of these things. I fully support Jack and Lisa's position.
All right, so do we have consensus to draft a letter? And to Commissioner Booker's point, we will have this on the agenda, and then people can come out and we can discuss it.
It's
But
not,
I feel like-
my point is that you're not, that's not my point. My point is, before we even discuss what, you are advocating for a position, you're directing staff to expend
No one is-
resources
we're-
before we've had any chance to discuss it. To John's point, I was here for 1 or 2 meetings when this board discussed this issue several years ago before I was on the Board of Commissioners. It was not frightening in any way. It was a correct decision by the board not to implement that law, but it was not frightening. If you want to bring this up, all you
Okay,
should
we're
do is
not
just
gonna- we're
just
not gonna
put it.
fight about
You
this.
should
This
have
is
put it
not
on the
to
agenda
be
so
fought
that
about.
people could have been prepared, not try to sneak it by in August, which is what you're trying
When
to
you
do.
do something in public, I'm not exactly sure how you say
I
that's
put it on,
sneaking by.
under new business, put a new resolution or direction to the board, direction to the staff to ask the legislature to implement prohibition on guns, whatever you wanted to
No,
have.
that's not what we're saying. So I
Should put it
You've
on,
made
whatever you
your
want,
point.
you should put it on there so you give
Okay.
notice to everybody.
All right, so you've made your point. This isn't a vote, but do we have consensus to draft a letter, and then we'll put it on the agenda for September? So I see Commissioner Clark shaking his head. I'm saying yes.
No.
We acknowledge you're a no. I hear Commissioner Larkin, Commissioner Nagel, Commissioner Abel, do you have?
Commissioner Fari,
He's off the
I don't know where
dais.
Commissioner Fari is. I think he should be on, I think he should be included in this consensus
Well-
taking.
Okay, well, if he's not here, then he can't be, and we'd like to move on, so.
You notice how people leave the dais at certain times lately. Commissioner
Okay, Commissioner Booker, this is not, that's
Commissioner
not
Larkin
relevant
did
at
it,
this
now
time.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Fari.
Booker, can we
How big
just,
my water bottle is.
You know, so
right.
it's,
John-
people walking off the dais when they don't
Commissioner
want to take a
Booker.
vote is inappropriate.
okay, thank you for your comment. All right, well, I do hear consensus, so if we will draft a letter, we will bring that forward, we will put it on the agenda for September for further discussion. Thank you, gentlemen, for allowing me to bring that forth. Since we are in new business, is there any other business anyone would like to bring up?
Madam President, we do.
Yes.
As staff, Steve, if you want to.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President and the board, I sent an email today to the township manager, which then he directed me to send to the board. So following the protocol for emergency projects, we have an end wall for a stormwater culvert that goes underneath Mill Road at 952 Mill. It was in need of repair. We had an engineering firm come out to provide design and bidding specs. During that period, we had last week's horrendous storm in the southern and eastern part of the township. That caused significant additional damage to this end wall and has also began to undermine the road. So my request to the manager was if I could please proceed under an emergency basis to get it repaired. I was authorized to do so, but the next step in the protocol is to bring this to the Board of Commissioners to get your approval. So the end wall is undermined, part of the street is undermined. This work needs to be done immediately, not just to save the end wall, but to save Mill Road.
So do we need to, we need to take a vote on this? You're looking for a vote? Are we waiting, did you want to show us something, or?
I think we have some pictures here that I took
Okay.
today.
By the way, during that storm that Steve mentioned, the 2 houses immediately downstream of this, one, the water level, the grass is about 2 foot up on their walls. The second house it missed the house, but took out a 100-year-old stone wall that has survived everything previously, and also has stirred up the dirt and pulled out a sewer that was encased.
So if you look to the upper left of that picture that Mrs. DiStefano has up, if you could scroll. Okay, this picture is an area between the curb and the end wall that's completely undermined. Years ago, somebody poured concrete. That is completely undermined now. So there's nothing between the curb and the end wall but this piece of concrete suspended in air. Could you go to the next one, please? This is just an overall picture. So there's the end wall. To the left, you see that caution tape. That's where part of the end wall once was. And that stone you see is part of the road stone, and that curb is completely exposed in the back. Public Works, I did request that they would, they did throw some stone there temporarily to support that, but that is a Band-Aid at best for just a few days.
So do you need a vote from us, or do you just need consensus? What are you looking for, gentlemen?
What we're looking for from the board is this would fall under emergency repair, but we wanted to advise the board of the current condition here that it sits at and its need for immediate repair.
I move that we support staff on declaration of emergency and repair this wall.
Well, where's the emergency piece?
So
The road will fall in.
It's very hard to see, Commissioner, but if you look in the middle of that picture, you'll see a piece of granite curb, and that's sitting vertically, and about 4 feet down, there's nothing behind it. It's just sitting there. So aside from that and the wall, aside from the wall collapsing, we could really start to lose Mill Road in a big event. So the procedure is for the department head to go to the assistant manager and manager, which we've done, and then to bring it to the board. I strongly feel that this is an emergency situation. To go through the design and bidding process, I don't believe that curb, wall, or street will be there after a few more big storms.
And I understand. I'm concerned that we have creep on the emergency determinations. I want to make sure that we save emergency declarations and emergency action for emergency situations, which would be generally abrupt or incidents that occurred in a very close point in time. That looks like it's been over years that this has been wearing away, and that's why I'm saying I'm questioning whether this would be proper for an emergency. I'm not going to try to overturn it for tonight. If you feel like we need to do it, let's do it, but let's not let emergency declarations overtake management and planning and bidding and proper procedures. That's all I'm saying.
3 weeks ago, Commissioner, this didn't fit the criteria. Today, this hits the nail on the head of everything you just mentioned as being an emergency.
As long as it's connected with a sudden or change or action.
The storm of last week, yes.
Is there, sorry, could there be an additional cost if we do nothing? Could it impact the situation, make it worse, and then it'd be twice as expensive?
Aside from the additional costs, which you are correct, you also have a liability. There's exposure to the township if somebody gets hurt here.
Okay. So I heard a motion Commissioner Nagel made. I will second that motion to approve the emergency declaration for this Mill Road project. Is there any other commissioner comment on this? Any staff comment? Is there any public comment? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the emergency declaration, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
I just have one more item under new business too. Actually, I guess we talked about it last meeting. There's a low-hanging wire over King of Prussia Road near Matson Ford that has plastic hanging, and I mentioned it last meeting. Want to make sure that somebody tries to get that thing up because I think it's close to 10, 12 feet off the ground.
Yes, we've made them aware of that. I know we've been waiting a long time for them to respond to a number of other wires that are there, but it's supposedly on their radar
All right.
to look at. Thank you.
Just want to make sure we keep
Sure.
it.
Thank you.
keep it forefront.
Any other new business this evening?
Bob was going to talk about the emergency declaration there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob.
Wanted to thank the board for your support on that.
Well, thank you for bringing it forward. Anything else in new business? All right. We'll move on back to discussion regarding dam structures in Radnor Township. Who wants to? So I will just say that I know we've been working on this. So we've got the Earls Lake Dam and we've got this Summit Hill Dam that the Heckmans, I'm sorry, discussed. So both are basically, one is right below the other, or was right below the other. I would like to commend our staff because our staff has been working tirelessly to try to get to the Department of Environmental Protection, which is a maze of bureaucracy, to say the least. We've also engaged with State Representative O'Mara. Her office and her representative, Larry Healy, have been working very hard to help us navigate that as well. I would really like to commend Mr. Norsini. He has been out. We've been out on weekends. We've gone and taken a look at that prior and really been working very hard on this issue, which, while it seems like it's definitely come to a head in this moment, I know this is not something that is new to your radar. It's new on mine, but not to yours. So I'll let you take it, Mr. Norsini.
I'll try to be brief, not my strong point. So this dam breach has been going on for several years. The township has been involved to the point that this Board of Commissioners and this township manager brought Carroll Engineering in to review the dam breach submission. They found that it was woefully inadequate. It was incomplete. So it is very much on this township's radar what's going on with the dam breach. On more than one occasion, I have requested DEP, basically said, look, we don't know how long this dam breach thing is going to be going on. We need to get Green Country to get the dam operational. There have been inspections on the dam. There are deficiencies that need to be addressed. When I was out there with Carroll Engineering, I mean, the deficiency reports note the pipe that goes under the dam, there's a valve, which we're not quite sure what it does, but it's underwater. So there is no freeboard on the dam, which our residents have mentioned. So basically, the level of the dam is where the spillway is. So any amount of rain that goes in just goes right out. I want to thank our commissioners and our manager because they've been working very hard and tight with Representative Jen O'Mara, as well as her Chief of Staff, Larry Healy. I had them out at the dam last week. They actually walked the dam with me. We went around the spillway. We crossed the dam. They were very interested. I showed them all that was going on, and she has pledged to help us out. So I've written letters and emails to the DEP asking them to just, look, we don't know what's going to happen with the breach. Get the Green Country HOA to fix this dam, to bring it up to the proper standard. Haven't got much on that. As far as the other dam that was noted, the Summit Hill Dam, so there was a builder who had a two-lot subdivision. It was an older two-lot subdivision. It was a Department of Environmental Protection requirement that he breach that dam, which he did do. We'll look, and the question was brought up tonight, whose property it is. I don't know. We'll look. It may actually be the property of the house that was recently built just a few years ago up the way. I don't know, but we will look at that. We're trying to research plans. Again, that was an old subdivision that was purchased and one home was built. So we'll see what we can find to share with our residents. I did commit to that. So that's where we are. Last week's storm, everybody knows about Wayne. But last week's storm, you know, what's been going on there last week's storm was incredible. None of our storm sewer, none of our stormwater management systems can take a storm of that magnitude. And as you can see, neither could the stream banks because there were rivers everywhere, flooded streets. I have pictures, the police have pictures. The manager was literally waist deep in it. So that was I'm not going to say that was a one-time event, by no means. I will not say that because it seems like we're getting these massive events somewhat more regularly. What was unusual was that it hit the Newtown Square portion of the township. That's usually not the spot that gets hit, which is one of the reasons folks that have never had an issue, all of a sudden, I met with somebody 7 o'clock that night, and their driveway was under 2 or 3 feet of water because there's a stream that goes by. So as far as the dam, we're pushing hard for it. The manager is, the board is. Representative O'Mara and Larry Healy have pledged to help us. So we're working to that end. The manager gave me a person at DEP to call tomorrow to see what we can get. It is a tough maze to go through there to get the right people. I don't know what level of enforcement DEP has to make them fix the dam. I don't know that legal process, but we have been asking that it be repaired and brought up to snuff.
And don't we have a phone call? There's a phone call scheduled on September 3rd, yeah, with representatives from DEP also. So I guess some different people. There seems to be multiple layers of DEP. Did you have something you want to say, Bob? I'm sorry.
Sure. This is one that shows the bureaucracy I think you spoke about earlier at the state level. The state seems to be very disinterested in this, which is a shame because the impact of the removal of that dam will be very impactful not only to the residents who live there, but also downstream of that all the way down to Darby Paoli Road, which again, they don't seem very interested. And if any of you were around when the hurricanes came in 11 and 12 to see the impact to the homes there is absolutely incredible. That water that you saw there in the videos that were brought, I don't think really explains enough of how much water is actually coming at that particular point. We've had conversations with the Army Corps. The Army Corps is aware of this, but they are not going to intervene at this time until there is some action plan, which, I don't know, Steve, how long that's been sitting out there. The concern is the potential collapse of that dam. And again, the responsibility of the state to do their part. So I think by this board staying on top of this, and then may I also suggest that we actually record the telephone conference call, since it seems like DEP doesn't want to come here in public to face the board, is that we'll record that and we invite, if we want residents to be involved, they should be involved too, to hear that conversation with DEP, and then we can replay that back so everybody knows what the conversations are, what's taking place, that they can't stand behind a phone call.
Thank you, really, the staff, thank you all very much. Can you come, you have to come to the mic, Mary Jo.
I just meant, you talked about this other culvert, and I know you're aware of this, Steve, but I think you should also take a look at the culvert now that goes under Earl's Lane right before the bridge, because that definitely was undermined. We had I know you patched it up, but I think we've got almost 4 feet on either side of that, because the water was wider than this room and the culvert is 2 feet wide. So
I was there that night. I did see that, and we are going to inspect that again. Correct.
We'll take a look at that tomorrow.
Well, again, I'd just like to thank the staff for all your efforts. Really, you guys have been working very hard in a difficult situation, and I would like to thank the board for listening. I just want you all to be aware of the situation. It is escalating, and hopefully, and at some point, we may need to come back before you for some sort of action. So I just wanted everyone to be aware and know what's happening. Is there anything else on this, gentlemen?
I would like to have an understanding of the feasibility of lowering the water level, because that's something that the constituents talked about, and you said that's at the top. So is there a way to lower the level of water that's in the structure?
Well, actually, the Green Country HOA unsuccessfully over the last few years was pumping down the dam. You could see the reservoir was getting pumped down, but you get a major storm and all that's lost. So when Carroll Engineering and I were out there is a mechanism. We can't guarantee this, but we feel that mechanism may be a valve that can be adjusted for flow. Whether that even works at this point, I don't know. It's been underwater for so long. So if the dam was brought back to a functioning level, the level should be able to be regulated. So when you stand on that spillway today, Commissioner, when there's been no rain all weekend, the water is lapping up over the spillway. If you stand on the spillway and you see how close it is to the homes there and what happens when these big storm comes, it sounds like a jet engine going down the spillway. And then that's just the beginning. It goes past these houses. I do believe that this dam can be regulated, but I will tell you anecdotally, we don't think it's functioning properly. It needs to be brought up to proper functionality.
It sounds like a mechanical pump needs to be installed and operated, and it needs to be brought down. That's the first thing, and that can be done. It sounds like somebody didn't feel like maintaining whatever that system is, and now it's higher than what it should be, and so something that wouldn't cost too much and is possible to do right away is to put a pump in there and start pumping it down. I would recommend that somebody do that.
Well, we're working on that. Unfortunately, the dam doesn't belong to us, but we're going to continue to approach all those options. Anything else on this? Okay. All right.
Just,
All right.
if I may, just on one
Okay.
item about DEP, I received an email today from a lot of the different managers in the Delaware County area and talk about their response. They've been trying to get a response for over 6 months for DEP, someone to talk to them. And it says they avoid us at all costs, and they've had no luck. So we're not alone in this.
Sounds like you guys have gotten farther than many others, so thank you.
This is what happens when we have too much government, right? When government becomes bloated, when government becomes non-responsive, and a bureaucracy. This is what the concern is, and this is why I am a consummate advocate for smaller government and accountable government. And the DEP is poster child for unaccountable, bloated government.
Okay, thank you. All right, on to item B, Resolution 2019-83, authorizing the payments of change orders 1 through 5 for the park improvements project for Beau Connor and Warren Phillip Home Parks to Gessler Construction in the amount of $45,467,000. Mr. Norsini?
Thank you, Madam President. So there's the change orders are listed on a table that was in the memo and is on the resolution. We ran into unsuitable soil under the pickleball court, considerable unsuitable soil. So the change orders were to replace the unsuitable subgrade with 2A material and geogrid, increase the cross section of the pickleball court pad, and add welded wire fabric. Again, when the contractor removed the sidewalk, there's approximately 180 linear feet of sidewalk to be replaced. As that was proof rolled, that was unsuitable soil. So the spec was to remove the unsuitable soil to a depth of 6 inches and put in compacted number 4 ballast. By the sidewalk, there is a retaining wall, and on the original plan, the area between the sidewalk and the wall was just to be stones, which would become a weed area, as well as stones for kids to throw around when they're watching their older brother or sister play. The backstops, that one, number 5, these location BC means Beau Connor. The backstops, this was to add the overhang on the backstops as opposed to just have the vertical backstop. That's for 4 of them. There was additional sidewalk that is cracked near the restroom at Beau Connor. That was not part of the original plan. It was not cracked by the contractor. That needs to be addressed. So they are the change orders for Beau Connor Park.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Okay. Any commissioner comment on this?
Has this work already been done?
Some of it, yes. And if you, in the memo, I had noted, so we moved on this work because we opened the township to a liability with extending the contract. The contractor will be able to come to us and say, you've stopped my work. In our contracts, we have to approve or not approve these things in a timely fashion. These are all very pertinent to the park. The pickleball court, it's a huge part of it. The sidewalk, more appropriate backstops, and the other ones are smaller.
Have we approached the engineer and their responsibility for incomplete or incorrect contract documents, and assess their willingness to pay either directly or through errors and omissions?
I don't see that as the case, Commissioner. The subsurface conditions were unknown to anybody, including, to staff, to the consultant, to the contractor. Nothing there. The increased cross-section is to also deal with that subsurface condition. The change on I'm not sure about the whole history on the backstops, but it would be wise to have them for the pop-up foul ball that doesn't wing back into the crowd. And the other two are small. I don't feel that this is an errors and omissions issue with the design engineer whatsoever.
Was there any error by the contractor or subcontractors that caused this?
No, sir.
Is there any other comment?
Steve, what's the effect on the overall budget for the project?
Well, we're hoping that this doesn't occur down at Philippone Park. So we did encounter quite a bit here. I believe we're still. I had to check to see what the total budget was. We're not doing anything extra to the park other than what's actually needed. So I'd have to get back to you, Commissioner, on where it stands with the budget.
I mean, we were very happy that the project came in under budget, actually, and was able to even include the pickleball courts, which
Right.
weren't in the original design.
We had some credit on that because of Mrs. Cohen did a great job. She reduced some of the dugout enclosures, so that's how we were able to award that at less than originally anticipated.
Right.
Any other comment? Any staff comment? Any public comment to the motion on the floor? All right, all those in favor of Resolution 2019-83, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Discussion regarding the authorization of a security camera installed at the corner of Morris and Sugartown. Commissioner Abel.
Thank you. This is an issue that I brought up back at the July meeting. At this corner over the last several months, we've had 3 major crimes, 2 at the Wawa, 1 at the bank on the corner of Sugartown and Lancaster. Neighbors in the area are asking for the township to do something. And as I said before, I don't see an appetite on this board to increase the police force. But what we can do is increase the resources that we give them. And overwhelmingly, I did a small poll, and the sample came back with about 85% in favor of posting a camera on the corner of Morris and Sugartown, which would give coverage of the area. Talking to some of the businesses in that area, they are in full support, and I think there's actually an opportunity where they would, at least entertain the discussion of contributing to the cost. So what I would ask tonight is that we request the police department to come back with some options on what they would like to see, and then have further discussion as a board.
Is there any commissioner comment?
My only question would be, would there be a sign or any indication that there's a camera in the area, or is that intended to be stealth? Or
Well, I think the police have a couple different options, and speaking to the chief, there is one option that would be, it would be noted. I mean, there'd be a sign that this area is under surveillance.
so that's undetermined, but that is part of the consideration.
Yeah, but I mean, the idea is to have the police come back with what they, a couple options on what they would like to see and what would help them in their job.
I really have a hard time supporting this because cameras typically are not a deterrent. They're a tool for solving the crime after it happened. The murder and the robbery took place in a facility that had security cameras all over the place. So you're giving people false confidence. In addition, it adds a burden to the staffing levels of the police force. Do you expect them to monitor to this camera or only to look at it after something has occurred? I just would have a hard time supporting this.
And so I went back, and Commissioner Clark had recommended a similar camera, or have a camera posted near the park entrance on Conestoga. And on October 8th, 2018, this board voted unanimously to approve those and have those cameras set up at the park entrance. And that was over one burglary or a couple break-ins at the park, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, these are three major crimes at a major intersection where we've also had a pedestrian hit in the last couple years. It's close access to Route 252, 76. If we're going to put a camera in any position, I think this is the ideal place.
My questions are, would any of that line of sight be directed, or would some of that be on private property? Would it? I mean, because that is an invasion of privacy if you don't want it on your property.
I can just speak for the businesses. I mean, it would obviously probably hit private property no matter which way we angle it.
Okay. So, and then also, who would monitor it, and how often would it be monitored?
That we can't answer. I don't think it would be monitored live, but we have to research it.
And what happens if, there's an apartment complex, or there's a gym, or Wawa, or other businesses, not even the businesses, because I don't know if Wawa doesn't own that little strip mall.
Correct. They are looking to...
It would be the owner, and let's say one of those owners of the businesses, or even if it goes across the street, which isn't even in our township or county for that matter, and they say, no, we don't want to be on surveillance. Do they have legal recourse? And I don't want this to cost the township a lot of money.
Madam President, I think what this looks at is the township owns the right-of-way there, so the township could place this within the right-of-way. One of the items that we looked at is how this could be monitored. It's not going to end up going to Delcom, but there are some options that Chris had come up with that can be added to this. However, we were looking at the camera at Brookside, and when that popped up, it actually showed traffic was stopped, and we responded and found out that there was a tow truck that actually hit the bridge. And our hope is that we could have the technology tied to the MDTs within the cars, that actually if they sit on patrol or whatever, they could actually pop up these screens. So the potential sits for possible proactive measure.
But that didn't answer. It's great that, that it can help in other ways. But what happens to the property owners that want to essentially opt out of having their property put on surveillance? What rights do they have, and does that put the township at risk?
That's why the police need to investigate it and come back with, to answer those questions. I mean, there's a lot of questions, Sean, that I would have about
It's different if you're patrolling the park, and that's 100% township property, or
right,
or 80% township property. Just we're patrolling a right-of-way, and every piece of land outside that street is private property.
Could be. But yeah, I mean, it's a question to be answered. I mean, there's cameras in cities all over this country that are in the right-of-way, but you will see in the background private property. So I don't see that as a major issue, but that's a question that's got to be answered when they do the due diligence and report back to the board. I think tonight is, those questions we need to know.
Yeah.
And tonight is just to authorize them to,
sure,
to initiate this.
Yeah, no, I look at this like people that opt out of having Google Earth drive by their house and their house is blurred out. So these people would not have that that opportunity, and that's the That's the liability issue that I would see. That, you know, it's great. It could make your house safer, but if you want that privacy of who's coming in your house or who's coming out of your house, you have no opt-out, and that I
We
think
don't know.
it's I think it's big. I think it's big government, and it's the slippery slope.
Agree with that. I generally am opposed to governmental monitoring of the public, and I'm very concerned about abuse and deprivation of liberty. But in this case, if I trust Commissioner Abel and his knowledge of the area and of his constituents, and while it's not something that I would advocate for in my area, if he feels it's the right thing, I'm going to support him in that.
So, and I apologize because I stepped off the dais. So we're just looking for consensus to give the police the opportunity, because I would really like to hear more from the police on this. The police the opportunity to investigate it and find out if it's something that's feasible, and something that's even
What the options are, there might be other.
what the options
you know, how to go about doing it, and what are the legal ramifications that Sean's raised, and, you know.
I would definitely like to hear from the police on it. I'm not opposed to them investigating it further and coming back with a recommendation either for or against or whatever.
And how to fund it.
I'm sorry?
How to
how to
fund
fund it. That's always the question, right? So I hear a yes, a no. You're a no, Luke?
Yes.
A yes, I'm a yes. For the investigation. With investigation, all right. So I think we hear consensus for an investigation, and then for you to come back and report back as to the feasibility, whether you recommend it or not, and then I guess what the cost would be.
And some of the particulars, like will it be a sign, or will it be announced, or will it not? I just, and also whether there'll be sound on the video. I think that's sound and video and privacy. There's issues in Pennsylvania versus other states as well, so.
We'll look at all those.
Commissioner Abel, is there anything else? No? Okay. All right, then, you feel you have a direction, so you guys are good. All right, so we'll move on to Resolution 2019-82, awarding the contract for an implementation plan and funding strategy for the Darby Paoli multi-use trail to McMahon and Associates in the amount of $12,200. Mr. Norsini?
Thank you, Madam President. The proposal from McMahon and Associates is to identify viable grants for the project, coordinate with the grant agencies, and assist with the actual grant application. This project, from its inception a few years back, the intent was to fund it 50% through the use of grants. So this proposal is in keeping with that plan. McMahon and Associates is a sub-consultant to Meliora Design, who is doing the design for that trail. So staff is respectfully requesting that the Board of Commissioners award this contract to McMahon and Associates so that we can try to find grant funding from several agencies for the Darby Paoli multi-use trail.
All right, may I get a motion to approve Resolution 2019-82?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Okay. Is there any commissioner comment on this? All right, is there any staff comment? Is there any public comment to the motion on the floor? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of Resolution 2019-82, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0 with Commissioner Clark off the dais, and Commissioner Larkin is absent. Okay, initiative to advertise the environmental and cost savings advantages of compost. Commissioner Farhi.
Thank you. So after hearing a lot about recycling and the environment's important to pretty much everyone up here, I thought maybe that we could look at a way to help the environment as well as cost save by teaching residents about composting versus just throwing out food. So composting is very easy to do. You need basically most of the time you need a garbage can and some water and bacteria, and Mother Nature will take over and break down organic material. And there's a lot of different types of organic material, from food to yard waste to those are the two main ones. I did try to do a little bit of math here, and I wish Steve McNellis was here to see if I'm right, where it could be a cost savings to the township as well as, to the environment. So what let me get my math here. So approximately 13% of, this is according to the EPA, and I did look that up on the EPA website, is organic waste, so you could compost most of that. So approximately 13% of maybe our waste could be composted, and it would run, if you could do all of that, it would run a cost savings based on what we pay for trash around $50,000. Assuming that you're not going to have everyone do composting, if you had 25%, get a bucket and figure out how to do it, it'd be around a $12,500 savings to the township. And it would be a way to help your garden and help the environment. So just something that the board, and maybe we could kick this over to the environmental board to take a look at.
So just what exactly, so you're asking for an advertising initiative around the benefits of composting?
Well, yeah, I mean,
and
well, that's what I see it helping the bottom line to the township. So I think that the township would need to decide if it's something that it's worth investigating. It's good for the environment, but it does have a cost of money for us to advertise it, and hopefully it would save approximately, if we could get 25% of the organic material out of our trash load, it could run, hopefully, depending on where the prices are now, maybe around $12,000, $15,000 in savings.
Sean, at least twice in the last 10, 15 years, we've run seminars on composting. So we could resurrect that material. Also, might want to suggest to Radnor Conservancy, they're always looking for educational opportunities. Composting's great. When you and I first talked about it, I thought you were talking about the township physically composting, collecting people's waste. And
no, well, I mean, anything. It's easy enough to do. I have a compost in the backyard.
As do I.
And it's easy. If it's not composting, just usually add water. Not too much, though.
But the EAC would be a good.
And I think that kicking it over to them, I think it's at least bringing it up in conversation.
Okay, well, we can certainly, I guess, kick it to the EAC and ask them to investigate how we could implement an informational campaign and maybe collaborate with groups like the Conservancy to put the information out there.
I mean, you could also do it something like this that you send or you put on the website as well. There's a lot of different ways, but just getting that idea out there, even putting something up online, if you go home and you YouTube it or Google it, there's a million ways to compost, and there are a million things that you can compost.
Okay, I think that sounds good. So we will direct this to the EAC. And I guess then that will segue us into trash and recycling review and possible. Oh, do you have something? Sure, Sarah. Would you like to speak?
There's no doubt that composting is good. We should not be, it directly relates to the yard waste pickups where the trash trucks drive all over the township looking for yard waste to pick up. And I got a few thoughts about that. The city of Austin, Texas, has a program whereby they will give any household 2 chickens, $75 for the coop, and an educational cost, the cost of their education to do it. They figure on a grand scale by 2040, they will have reduced 90% of the organic waste out of the trash stream, and they are giving each household $75 a year. It's nominal if they will have their chickens and their compost pile. So that's number one. Number two, Lynn Villa has gone into the composting, organic waste composting. For $5 a week, they will bring you a bucket, and they will come and pick it up once a week. And then at the end of the month, if you want it, and if it's in season, they will bring you back free compost. So this is going on. Haverford Township's EAC is very interested in starting an organic composting facility. And of course, they looked at Skunk Hollow and contacted me and said, couldn't we, Haverford Township and Radnor Township, do it together? Because the heaviest part of our trash stream is organic waste. And if it's in the landfill, it produces methane, which is one of the gases of climate change that we really don't want to have. So actually, it's a good idea. It needs pretty good teaching, because it's not just a trash can and water and waste. It's got to have airflow in it. It's got to be a sandwich of green, brown, and then something like soil on the top. I have compost piles at my house, and there are critters who like the compost piles, and they are critters that people don't like, i.e. rats. So one needs to figure out how to handle that. And that's because I put about 165 pounds of organic vegetable waste in my compost piles every year. You wonder how I know. I weigh it every day. That's a lot of organic waste for one person in one household. It would definitely be good, but it requires a lot of teaching and coercing for people to put a composter in their backyards. But I agree with you, and it would help with our trash situation, and it would help with what's going on at Skunk Hollow, which some people don't like with the leaves, because it's more than leaves. It's tennis shoes and tennis balls and rags and plastic. So there's really no reason why people couldn't keep their leaves on their own property, at least some of their leaves on their own property, and compost them. I agree with you. But there are programs. There's also Bennett. Bob talked to Bennett, who does composting, but they are only doing it in the city of Philadelphia. So it's $20 a month to have Lynn Villa do it for you. And then you get compost back in the spring. I just want you to know there are movements. It's definitely part of this climate change business. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, so speaking of trash and recycling, we will segue into the trash and recycling review and possible recommendations. Mr. Zakowski, can I first just ask, this is a lovely piece. Did the township put this together?
No, that was done by the Conservancy.
The Conservancy? Okay, that's lovely. All right, Mr. Zakowski.
Okay. We've put together a little slideshow here that kind of gives a little background of where we are and a couple different options since the costs have been going up for not only disposable, also recyclables. Right. We see here what the chart shows is from 2018, what we can see from the recyclable totals from January of 2018 at a cost of $25.70 per ton to where we sit today in July, up to $72.75 per ton. So there's been a significant increase in the costs, and it's continued to go up. It's anticipated to continue to go up. We received notice from Republic that what's going on here, what's happening with the recycling industry, and it goes back to the impacts caused by China's enforcement of its contamination standards, which again, a lot of that is being rejected and also going into the disposal. Even a lot of the glass that if it's now broken, they will not take it. It is almost impossible the way we collect glass that it's not going to break. So the market is drying up. It's becoming much tougher. So the cost will continue to rise moving forward. Again, we've got some of these here, and wow, that's small. Okay. Okay, it's still a little tight, but
You have to read them.
Wow. The first one is some options to consider is initiate a trash fee to put up to how to combat this. This will never cover the additional increase in costs for disposal and recycling as it continues to go. The fee may fluctuate each year, either up or down, depending on the disposal and the recyclables market, which again, there's no idea of how that's going to go. Second one, option is a centralized recycling center, which we would suspend curbside recycling for a one-year period depending on the recyclables market. Each year at budget time, the board will review the costs of the recyclables and where that market is going to determine if curbside recycling should return or resume. If you've driven around, and I know since this has become an issue, we've talked about bags, people not bagging things, not putting cardboard that has like pizza boxes or those are rejected. So the issue is going to come down to is how do you try to control these costs? The other option that we have is do nothing. We continue in the same course that we have. Additional revenue would need to be generated to cover these increasing costs of disposal. And without any new revenue to cover the increasing expenses, more than likely it would have to be taken from operating costs within the township. So those are options we look at. We talk about recycling and the education that's gone on. There was included with the tax bills this year. We thank the treasurer for including those into the bills this year. I think we've actually seen it go the other way, that less compliance sits there. We do not have the time or manpower to be open every single bag to make sure what is in there and what isn't. It's tough on the recyclables market of how it is drying up, and you can see here the costs are continuing to rise rapidly, and there is nothing in sight to say this market is going to turn around. Again, you use the ideas of reduce, reuse, those items, those components, but are we going to get compliance with people taking more items out of the stream, washing bottles? Again, the glass isn't going to work. Bimetals, those types of things. What is the market? And right now, it seems the only market right now is aluminum, that one that is workable. So it really tightens that down. I know Commissioner Farley talked about, composting, trying to take a lot of that out. That is a strong consideration. However, we'll have to look at the other side. Is it not being done properly? Are we going to have rodent issues? Will there be neighbor disputes between how this goes? Will the wind be blowing the wrong direction? There's a lot of impacts, some of the tighter neighborhoods. And will people be willing to do those types of things? So these are options that are laid out here for the board to consider. If there's other ones that you would like us to look at, we pretty much just wanted to make the board aware of this and begin the conversation, discussion on this.
So Bob, what's driving the increase in the cost? Is it because of the man-hours that are spent segregating the trash, the recycle streams when we send them to the plant, or?
Some of that is the labor cost, but a lot of it is there's no market to send it to. And as that in the letter we had from Republic, it talked about China was the biggest market for taking that, and they have now want even cleaner, non-contaminated recyclables, which pretty much takes a lot of the recyclable waste stream out of their consideration for this, because they would want a clean product. Clean aluminum, clean glass, everything would have to be a certain way, and because it's such a tight market now, they can pretty much demand anything they want.
My understanding, Steve, correct if I'm incorrect, that the trash goes to be incinerated from the township. We don't really landfill any of the trash today. And we started putting aluminum and glass bottles in that, would that be a problem with our putting that into the incinerator in Montgomery County?
And I mean, you're right, it does go to the trash to steam plant. I can't answer about that. I guess it's the same as people who don't recycle, who throw those things in there. You pay by the ton, so you're going to pay for it.
So the trash to steam plant presumably would take the glass, and maybe does it melt? Do they
Yeah, I think that's something we'd have to find. I don't know how well it's sorted, but we'd have to call them and see what occurs. I mean, people don't, not every person recycles. There are people that don't do it. And I'm assuming that just goes into the waste stream.
And in some of those transfer stations, a lot of that, they do have pickers that go through as it goes through a conveyor belt, and they're pulling off items that cannot go into that type of energy producing or steam or.
What about, Bob, having, and I'm not saying I want to do this, but you laid out some options there. I do not believe that the constituents would be very pleased about driving recycles over to the township. Maybe they would. I don't think, I think you're going to get a drop-off anyway. Why not ask, or have you evaluated, and if you haven't, why not have it segregated by the township people at their homes? You could give 3 recycle bins instead of 1. Do you think that would not work? And obviously you've thought about it, so what are your considerations around that alternative?
The problem with that is, again, the cleanness of the product. We could have multiple containers for that, which would work. It would be tougher to collect, and you'd have to have bins and equipment that actually segregates that. But it's something we can look at and we can pursue that. Because again, you're right. How many people are going to bring to a centralized location?
It is also as part of the problem that people are putting in the trash bag all of their recycles instead of the recycle bin is supposed to be for recycles, but a lot of people do put that in put a trash bag of recycles out, which I guess that's part of the problem as well.
It's part of that because you can't put it in plastic bags, so that's supposed to come out. If the product's not clean, that is another problem. And again, as they're going through this process and they're picking a lot of that out, the product isn't there that's clean for a recyclable to be able to actually sell or market that, which a lot of that, again, is it's easier for them to landfill this.
And then the other issue with the glass is because they're dumping it in the truck, the glass breaks.
That and just with the packer, by them packing it through that process of packing it, it's going to break. And then even when they take it to the floor of the transfer station, just how it's unloaded, more than likely it's going to break as it comes out of the truck too. It's a hard market.
The League of Women Voters did a very good program here one night. It was filmed and is available on Radnor TV. Answers a lot of the questions you're asking, Rich.
How about if we reduced the stream and we threw in the trash aluminum cans and just recycled bottles, glass bottles?
But aluminum's the only thing that there's a
The
commodity
aluminum is
for
what
right
the
now.
market is,
Yes.
so if we segregated that out and I think incorporated that we would take aluminum and whatever other item that would be attractive, that this is what we would recycle, we can say these are items if you want to compost, we can try to go to that
But you
market.
can't, you
try to
can't compost
encourage it.
glass bottles.
No, I mean other items, organics that you would have. Now, the recyclable is going to come down to probably.
The only reason I suggested that is because the glass bottles don't do well at the incinerator, and the aluminum cans they do probably burn. If we're going to cease or curtail it, it seems like the glass is the one that's going to be the
Actually,
problem.
no. That presentation, there was a gentleman here from Republic, and he went through the whole thing, and glass is a loser. There's no market for it right now.
Hold on.
So we should throw that away then. That's what I'm saying.
I actually made a call today because I've scrapped in the past. Light iron is very cheap. It's about $5. It's next to nothing, but there is still a market for it. Aluminum runs anywhere between 21 to 36 cents. It's about 26 cents right now. Your tin cans that your vegetables come in or tuna comes in, I think it's about $5 per 100 pounds. But my question is if you had two separate bins and you had the plastic, the glass, and the paper in one bin, and you have all the metal in the other, and I called to just a place where I've scrapped that. Would it be possible, and the guy's going to get back to me, is would they take all of our recyclables? Would they take it and they would sort it out? They have big magnets, you'd get the iron. Yeah. But instead of us paying, we could drop it off there and they would do it for free. Would the township be...
If they're willing to get that free, get it in writing as soon as possible, because I'm not sure of anyone who would take it for free.
No, they're
Because-
taking our metal, but it would have to be separate from the glass, the plastic, and the paper.
Which-
we had two separate bins.
Which then we'd have to make sure that at the curb, if it's not separated, then we would leave it then.
Then you leave it and
Then
you
we'd leave
put a nice note and maybe unfortunately a fine, or I don't know. You guys would do that?
It's an option we can look at,
Can
sure.
you look at seeing if
We
a
can-
third
we can do
party,
that.
and then you would take money out of the cost that you're paying, and hopefully they would give you a nominal amount, and you'd actually bring money in to help offset that.
Yeah. My
Is-
only concern is that you have the big waste haulers who are looking at, they have the biggest market to be able to grab the recyclables, and there's no market for them. And you would think they would be the ones that could actually have the power to go and get more money in for selling
Could
these.
you wait 1 second?
So I think that's probably the biggest part is contamination on this. How
Well,
do you
I mean,
ensure contamination?
like I said, I mean, as I do my
Absolutely.
business, if there's an interest, I'll send them your way.
We are more than happy to look at that.
Okay,
Thank
perfect.
you.
Great. Thanks.
So I've been sharing this out in my constituent newsletter. I shared out a lot of the information that was from the event sponsored by the Township in Villanova and the League a couple weeks ago. And multiple people have written back to me saying, you know, if people are putting it out in plastic bags, if people are not, you know, doing it properly, you shouldn't collect it, right? So I feel like I've heard from many constituents saying, if people aren't doing it properly, we need to educate them at the curbside. Maybe we make a sticker, create a sticker or something, yeah, that we're leaving behind and saying, you know, we appreciate your effort, but you know, here's, and I know we don't want to add more responsibility or, you know, more things to the guys that are out, you know, doing the collection, because they have to get through their routes, and I know it's very busy. But, you know, if they just stuck a sticker on and, you know, then people can continue to read and be educated. You know, Commissioner Larkin and I were having a conversation about this. You know, so many people put it out in bags and plastic bags because they have those receptacles in their home and they put a plastic bag in it. You know, maybe, you know, people need to start to learn you can't do that. And I think I also like the idea of separating it. So when I lived in Springfield Township, I don't know if they still do it this way, but we had one receptacle that was for paper, and then the other that was for, you know, commingled other items. So, and maybe that's not the way to go anymore. Maybe, you know, having one for metals is the way to go, and one for everything else. You know, I don't know, as things
My grandmother
change.
had brown glass, green glass, clear glass, tin can. No, but yeah, no. I
Yeah,
didn't mean to interrupt,
but maybe some of the, you know, options around, you know, continuing to educate while you guys investigate and bring back to us, you know, what some of the recommendations would be. I don't think I agree with Rich. I don't know that anyone would want to bring their recycling here. I think then we would see people just stop recycling altogether, and then we would have the issue of it all being in the trash. So is that what we want?
What about smell? Sorry.
You
have
know,
to bring it in.
so that's just an idea. I will tell you, I have had many people write to me and suggest that to me. So I don't know if that's, you know, something to consider.
Sure. We can do that. My only guess, we will do that. My only guess is what will happen is on Thursday and Friday for recyclables, if we don't pick it up, I guarantee that whole stuff, that all of that will be on Monday or Tuesday night, be on the curb, because I don't think people will take the time to go through and pick and sort. It'll just end up as Monday and Tuesday night, you're going to see it or Sunday and Monday nights, you're going to see that on the curb. So those are the things we've got to be aware of. But again, if it ends up that way, it's still less than what the recyclable charge is, so. Which is an option.
How about running the recyclables every 2 weeks, and then, you would save room by smashing the can, by making it, it's smaller to save room in the recyclable can.
Sure.
Is
And
that something that would
It
be a
is, even
cost
if we-
saving as well?
It would be, and even if we went to bigger containers, that would be one is, would people recycle more? Or if we have to go to multiple bins, that again is another option. So I think this is good conversation, a lot of dialogue that we're looking for.
Also, did you say that pizza boxes are rejected?
Yes, because if they're stained from anything from the pizza box, that's done. It's rejected.
Okay.
The cardboard.
Thought on our materials we said to put your pizza boxes in. Wasn't there something that we sent out?
If you do, remove the part that is stained by the pizza.
So, Sarah, you've been so patient. Please come up.
Just so you know, Steve McNellis and his men tried to put plastic labels on the inappropriately stored recycling. And I think Leah McVeigh, the first day, got 110 phone calls complaining. So that's one. Two, from the Blazensky gentleman who went to Old St. David's Church and spoke that I went to, and then the gentleman from Republic that came here. There are only 3 items that are compostable at all. That's the triangle 1 and 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, there is no market. No market for glass, no market for cardboard. There is one newspaper plant in Philadelphia that does recycled paper. So it doesn't do any good to put all the rest out. It's going to go probably to Covanta and be burned, and I won't even go into the ethics of that because the Covanta plant in Chester does not have the proper scrubbers, and the pollution's coming out of the stacks, and it isn't just staying in Chester. So there is an issue. The other issue is the cost of trash has gone up because I don't know whether it's temporarily or permanently. The trash is now going to Covanta to be burned. And what I heard said that night is it now goes down county to the transfer station. The county puts a $20 a ton surcharge on it, and then it goes to the Covanta plant to be burned again. So here's a suggestion most people probably wouldn't like, that Lower Merion tried. I tried to find out whether they're still doing it or not. Each household gets 1 trash can of a certain size. That size is determined by Public Works because the trash men have to be able to lift it into the truck, or we go to the fittings on the back of trucks so that your trash can mechanically gets lifted into it. A second trash can costs you X premium. A third trash can is X plus Y, and a fourth trash can is Y plus Z. So I've been thinking about this a lot because it all goes in with climate change. Today, on my way home in Radnor Township, I saw someone who had very carefully put their trash out for tomorrow. They had, it's not a big house. They had 4 trash cans, 2 boxes that were easily the size of this, and an armchair for our trash men to pick up. So if we stop recycling because there's no market, we're going to add it to the cost of the trash. The bottom line is the change in people's behavior. And it's not just Radnor or the main line, it's everybody. We live in a consumer society, and we have too much that we're throwing away. And I don't know how you change people's behavior, because it's not easy. I'm trying not to use plastic. Do I have to tell you how many things that have come that is so encased in plastic that I'm worried I'm going to cut off my thumb trying to open it? It is a problem. But each of us is going to have to change our behavior somehow. And that's the unpardonable and the improbable and the very difficult. So is it going to be recycling or is it going to be trash? And how do we get a hold of this? Because the bottom line is it's costing the township a great deal of money. And pretty soon there are things we'd really love to do. We're not going to be able to. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Sarah.
Lisa, can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
Bob, I think if you had something like this, and you put a sticky on the back of it, and you slapped it on everyone's recyclable can that said, you know, you need a clean pizza box, you can't bag this stuff, this is what you can recycle, this is what you can't recycle. And if you do it every year of this is, you know, well, we all know Thanksgiving falls on a Thursday, but, you know, is your recyclable going to be picked up Friday, or is it not going to be? Then someone could just look at their recyclable can, and it would clear up a lot of questions. I don't, you know, again, there's a cost to it. It's expensive. They're probably about 30, 40 cents a piece. But if you did that every year, I think that would really help our public works people when it comes to what they're, you know, making their life easy. And, you know, and almost if you have like a ticket, the reason why we didn't collect it is because of, you know, label them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, number 5, wrapped in a plastic bag. Number 3, you know, pizza box with oil on it. And I think that could help streamline that and take a lot of stress off of our public works. The other thing that is recyclable that we didn't talk about is cotton or cloth. And that's the other thing too. I know that Jake did an initiative where they'll take your clothes and stuff. I try to donate some of my clothes to the veterans, but I think looking at that, and I didn't see the numbers of how much fabric is in our system, but you know, if someone somewhere else could wear something, I think that would be great. If you could recycle that, you could keep somebody warm or keep somebody close. You could also take a lot of stress out of the for our public works as well.
Sure, and I know that Steve McNeil's told me today that the curb by clutter has actually increased, so it is starting to catch hold here in the township. So that's a good thing.
So Bob, what do you want us to do right now? Do you want people to stop recycling?
No, actually, this is an item here that what we're looking for is some feedback from you, in which we can start putting something together to come back to you at, because this is something that for us to, we would have to actually put some type of mailer or something that people will read at their door. So this is something we put a plan together, and how we address it for calendar year 2020. How do we want to approach this? So I think the conversation, the feedback we've gotten from you tonight allows us to go back and now start putting something together and give you some options to look at of how we can do that.
Well, what about the expense, though? I mean, if it costs $70 a ton or a yard to recycle, and it costs $30 a yard to remove trash, why wouldn't we tell everyone to just put it in the trash?
Well, we can do that if that's the board's desire. We can do that.
So for glass, I know there's no market for glass. When we send the glass to they're crushing it up and doing what with it? Aren't they melting it and making new bottles somewhere?
In recycling, they go through and pick out whatever is recyclable. The rest of it is landfilled.
I thought you said that it's a law that you have to, in Pennsylvania, that you have to recycle certain things.
Act 100 is what stipulates recycling, and it asks you to look at the several items that you can look at recycling. So there does have to be recycling, but there is no mandates to say this specific items need to be. They encourage it, but there's nothing that mandates curbside recycling. It's an overall program that is established by the state to recycle items And again, a lot of that is when it was written, I think back in the 80s, I believe, of when Act 100 went into effect. I don't think they ever saw a market that was going to change like this now in recyclables. So it's now the bottom line costs are hitting here at the township of how we operate. And at the state level, I'm not sure they feel any impact at all.
But this is just a, an economic, maybe downturn, but for China, in 5 years from now, you could have an economic upturn in India,
Absolutely.
and then you're going to see the desire increase.
I think that's the hope that the market will rebound.
You need to make sure that if this stuff becomes almost profitable for the township to dispose of, and we can help subsidize our tax base, that's great. You don't want to totally limit everything, so if there's an upturn that we're caught unprepared.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever make a profit out of this market, but it's to try to reduce the impacts to us the best that we can.
Just out of curiosity, what are the bottles that they do want and they do take? What type of bottles are they looking for?
There's no market for it right now. The market is so poor, and it almost has to come in a perfect state. In its current, it cannot be broke, cracked. It needs to be clean. So right now, in the way we collect, and I don't know of anybody that goes and hand picks up a glass bottle and sets it in a bin and then takes it and walks it into a facility. That market is just not there anymore.
Okay, so Bob, do you feel like you and the staff have some information from the commissioners that you can take back and start to formulate a plan?
Absolutely.
Do you have a timeline when you think you might want to come back?
We're going to want to probably come back the second meeting in September.
Okay.
And actually be able to tell you, here's some more options, and then with the board drilling on those and try to look at this even further.
Okay. All right. So thank you all for participating in the conversation. Thank you to the public as well. Okay, back on to discussion of tree maintenance and sidewalks.
I'm curious if the board has considered implementing any policies that would discourage local businesses from using single-use plastics. Things like straws, soda bottles, water bottles, plastic bags. They usually end up in landfills and in our ocean. And I think the board could come up with some ways to incentivize businesses to switch to using items that are compostable. It's really popular in different cities in California and throughout the world, and I think we could get on, we could come up with an idea that could definitely encourage businesses to switch to this, and that would reduce the amount of recycling that we have then as well.
So we did have our EAC work on that, and they did actually send something back to us. And then the state of Pennsylvania, in the budget that was recently passed, added an amendment that prohibits municipalities from enacting any kind of laws that ask you to eliminate any kind of single-use plastics. So we really can't do that at this moment. I think it expires in 2020, I think I read.
It's true. I think, though, the term that you brought up was good, is incentivize. What can we do to incentivize businesses to make that type of change? It's different than mandating and saying you must do this, but by the incentives, I think, is an opportunity to say, how can we incentivize the business community to do that? So I think that may be the angle we would want to go at, is what can we do to incentivize people to make the change?
So maybe we take a look at what the EAC sent us and see how we could amend it.
We will absolutely do that.
Awesome, thank you. And I think Mom's Organic Market does a fabulous job in terms of just composting and really sorting out trash. So.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thank you for participating. Sarah. 2 minutes, Sarah.
Just so you know, Westchester just passed a bag ban. They made the date the day after the expiration of it. So there's nothing that says that the township can't continue to work forward, hoping that in a year and a day it could go into effect. And what I'm finding when I go to stores and they say, would you like a plastic bag? And I say, no, thank you. If I ever go back, they remember and they say, you didn't want a bag before, do you want a bag today? So I think through education, we could probably solve 50% of it.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, now we will move on to, unless there's any additional public comment on this. Okay. We will move on to Township trees and sidewalks. Mr.
Okay.
Zankowski.
Yes, thank you. The discussion here is the responsibilities of the township and sidewalks. The first time we talk about is responsibility by ordinance that was established in the administrative code under 263-9 street trees, in which maintenance of the street trees, the cost and expense of planting, pruning, maintaining, fertilizing, protecting, and caring for street trees shall be borne by the township unless the township determines that a property owner is responsible. So what this does is basically lays in the township's laps the responsibility for maintaining the trees of the township. So that has been established by ordinance. As some background here, I know we had a conversation at budget time in which the Shade Tree Commission recommended in their 2019 budget proposal that the board consider an investment of over $1 million towards tree maintenance and planting. The administration advised the board during the 2019 budget presentation with the input and advice from the township arborist, John Hosbeck, who has joined us here this evening, that we are about 25 to 30 years behind schedule in maintaining trees and the replanting of those throughout the township. The administration recommended investing $2 to $3 million per year for the next 25 years to get caught up in the maintenance and replanting of trees throughout the township. We know that over the last year we've had a lot of input from residents, from the Conservancy and others of how we should maintain trees, why trees come down, why they don't come down. As you can see, there are huge expenses that we would be looking at for the township to budget. Currently, we have a budget of $100,000 for 2019 on the removal of trees. As of today, we sit at $150,000, and we still have months to go to complete this year. And those are reactive. Those are ones where we either get John to come out and say, we've got a tree in a bad situation. It doesn't even go to maintenance of these trees. For sidewalks, we know that there are numerous sidewalks throughout the township which have been broken or damaged due to the township trees in the right-of-way, as defined under 263-9. Over the past several years, we have begun the process of repairing some of these sidewalks that have been damaged by the township, but we have not even come close to budgeting enough money to be able to make that impact. Some options for the board to look at: increase funding for tree maintenance, replanting, and sidewalk repair in the range of approximately $3 million per year. Another option is to repeal Section 263-9 street trees, returning the responsibility back to the property owners from the back of the curb inward to the property. This would eliminate the bulk of the $3 million per year for the maintenance of street trees. It would give the property owner their rights back to be able to maintain trees, replant if necessary. However, there still needs to be a significant funding towards township trees residing in our parks, open space, and parcels of land that are owned by Radnor Township. Again, we look at this for a long period of time that we're playing catch up on, that has been placed in your laps to make some hard decisions on. We had surveyed a number of communities around us in which a majority of them do not maintain street trees. Those are the responsibility of the property owner. Those communities that do maintain the right-of-way have established tree crews in departments and divisions that are staff that has the equipment to be able to maintain their trees. If I can, John, if there's anything you'd like to add here as the township's arborist. I do want to say John has done a tremendous job for us and has been very responsive. Weekends, evenings, holidays, everything. So, John.
Thanks, Bob. Bob's most certainly correct. I mean, we are way behind in our tree maintenance program. Probably twice a week I'm out looking at trees. And as I'm entering that tree, I see 3 or 5 other trees that could be maintained or are of risk. So I think it's something that, you know, we either need to pass it back to the resident or we need to increase. And I think Bob's number of $1 million might be a little light. He's going by a manager role. I'm going more by an arborist role. So, I mean, we have big numbers out there. And I think it's something we need to start managing.
And the part of that, just to dovetail on John's, we have not talked about replanting. We've put 80, I believe it's 83 trees in the ground so far, but we're so far shy of where we should be replanting these, where they come down. So again, a lot of decisions that need to be made now to budget time. We thought that, I know we moved up from September to now to be able to have that discussion and give the board some time to look at this and some options, and with John's expertise here to be able to assist. And I would like to say on John, there's times where John recommends trees to come down and you scratch your head and go, John, that tree looks fine. When it's cut down, you can see how hollow it is on the inside, and that tree is more than likely going to come down, and we've seen a lot of them starting to come down now, where there's a hazard that exists. There are ones that PennDOT has made it clear they're not responsible for anything on their right-of-ways in the roads, so they have opted out. And we know a lot of trees, a lot of state roads throughout this township, that trees are in need of maintenance, trimming, pruning, being taken down, that are being borne by the township.
And
to be able
that
to
$1
correct
million
those.
is really just to manage risk. It's not for managing for preventative care.
So you've presented those are the only two options, or what you've got up there, and you want us to provide?
Those are the ones that, the significant impact, because one is, we need to, right now, we're just keeping up with whatever's presenting itself now. We're doing nothing as a proactive measure to a plan to be able to manage the forestry within this township. We know that a lot of people have brought up issues with trees in the parks and the vines and the invasives, all of those, that we just don't have the staff or manpower to be able to do those types of items. So it's a significant problem. We know that Public Works tries to go out and trim some of the trees where they can, because it's snow removal time. Those mirrors are getting hit from trees and limbs and branches that are there. When storms come up, we know that there's a lot of cleanup that goes with those as well.
I thought the township Public Works are the ones that cut down the trees. Why do we need $1 million or $2 million or $3 million a year? Who would receive that? Is that outside contractors?
It would be outside contractors. We do not have anyone that is licensed or certified as a tree climber. We do not have any of the equipment to be able to take down these trees that we've seen most of these coming down.
So I guess I have a concern about turning the responsibility back to property owners after we haven't been maintaining the trees. So we're basically going to turn back over potentially trees that are going to come down, trees that are going to fall. I mean, right now, if a tree falls in the road that, you know, that's in the right of way, the township goes and takes care of it. If we turn that back to property owners, then that becomes their responsibility, right, to move it out of the road or something like that?
What the township would do is trees that fall in storms, we would remove those trees. However, in a maintenance type standard, that would be the responsibility of the homeowner.
So you're talking strictly maintenance of these trees?
Yes, that would be turned back over. If something comes down in the street, we're going to go ahead and remove that tree from the street so we can open it up. But I'm not sure what the philosophy or theory is on why the township took this on. I'm sure there are some, I think I have some ideas of why it was done, but I'm not sure it was vetted out of the full impact of what this is by taking these on.
How long has this ordinance been on the books?
We'll get the information on this.
Okay. Does anyone have any, I mean, so are you looking for some sort of direction from us this evening? Are you looking for us just to know that this is
We're just looking
out there
from
and
you
you're
if there's
gonna?
other options you would like us to pursue or put together, plans, options, proposals that you'd like us to see. Go a different way, rule out certain items and say this is absolutely not going to happen, and that gives us a better way to look at how we're going to manage these trees.
Well, I had an idea that I brought up for discussion, which was to allow property owners to be exempt from the shade tree ordinance if they wanted to remove any tree at their own expense, which within the right-of-way. And that was soundly criticized by many people in the public. That was in March or April of 2017, 18.
There was a conversation we had with the wires and utilities and that, so.
My concern
Correct.
is that they take down the wires. That's the big issue, is I don't want them to take down the wires. So the theory was that if a property owner wanted to, at his own expense, remove a tree from the right-of-way that was threatening wires, especially threatening wires, that they would be exempt from the shade tree ordinance in doing that. That would be a assistance in addressing the issue that Bob is laying out here. And so I raised this in the past. The board should consider doing that to address the issue, is to allow property owners to. So Bob took it 100% the other way, which is require property owners to do that. But the shade tree ordinance, a lot of people don't want to remove any trees because they don't want to try to interpret or understand the shade tree, so they just don't remove anything.
Have we asked Shade Tree to weigh in on any thoughts with regards to this?
Sure, we can. We can do that.
I thought,
I think when we've asked them to weigh in, they're diametrically opposed.
no, but I thought this board voted several months ago to have, before we did anything with trees, to have Shade Tree amongst others put together a plan and bring it forth, putting priorities in place on where
Sounds
we
good to
should
me.
focus our energy. Because I don't think we should be going into wooded areas and taking trees down. That's part of that system, and if trees fall in wooded areas, that's what's supposed to happen.
Well, this is only for the right-of-way, isn't it? Isn't this the road right-of-ways we're referring to here?
That's correct.
So this is only the right-of-way, the 30, 40, 60-foot area on either, that is for township roads, and that's what we're required to maintain right now by ordinance.
So at Enke Park, none of this would apply. I know, John, that you took down a bunch of trees after that one fell on the snack shack, but this doesn't. This is something totally separate, because it is kind of a, I don't want to say a right-of-way, but it's our parking lot. And they did, in my opinion, they presented a huge danger to the children.
No, I would agree that is part of this whole program here, because obviously there's infrastructure right next to Enke Park, Ivan Avenue, which could be impacted if a tree or parts of the tree were fail. So this would be part of that whole program.
Well, I guess I'd, like Shade Tree to weigh in. I'm not trying to prolong the any decision on our part, but I'd like to at least, hear from Shade Tree, and then, I think we need to make a decision, and we need to. Obviously, this is a can that's been kicked down the road like many cans, and we're going to have to figure out how we deal with it. And so I think it's going to be left to this board. We're going to need to figure it out.
Well, you did receive a recommendation from the Shade Tree Commission last year during the budget process. Eileen put a very detailed plan and proposal together, what they saw, and I think that was their recommendation to you. So I think you have a recommendation from the Shade Tree
The $1
Commission.
million.
Yes, and I think it was laid out very well. They did a very nice job, so I think that is their recommendation. So we will.
Can they give us another recommendation?
We can ask them to look at their last recommendation. We will ask them to look at their last recommendation of if they are
I guess
firm
what
up
I'd
with
like
their
to know is what
recommendation.
they think about this. I'd like to know what they think about, the idea of returning the responsibility back to property owners.
We will do
And
that. We will ask them to
Does
opine
anyone
on
else feel
this.
that way? Am I the only, I'm not trying to give direction. Does anyone else feel that way?
I think your point initially was well taken, that to take that away from people, after 10, 20, 30, whatever many years it's been, the township's responsibility, it's going to be a hard sell. Again, that's why I had proposed if they want to voluntarily remove a tree, that they shouldn't. Today, we give an exemption for ash trees from the shade tree commission, from the shade tree ordinance. And my proposal was if it threatens electrical wires, that should be similarly treated. But there's a lot of resistance from the public to do that.
The more I think about it, having a property owner make the I'm sorry, Lisa? Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. Now I know what it's like. So having the property owner, I think they would take a lot more pride in it than, say, Pico cutting a tree. So it may not be that bad of a, I mean, you've seen the Pico chops on some of these trees. So having a property owner, which they don't want the tree to die, they want to make it look good, I think that could be incorporated in whatever shade tree decides.
Have we been appropriately vague enough for you?
Sure. No, I think this gives us something to work on. We will take this to the Shade Tree Commission to ask them to opine on this, to give a recommendation upon this. We'll ask them to review their presentation that they made to the board, and if they want to update that, adjust it, however, and then bring that back to the board, and we'll try to bring that back sometime late September for further discussion. But I think these are the things that we're looking for input from the board and how we move forward from this. So I think this has been helpful.
And I guess the other thing is maybe look at having our staff be able to remove the trees. That might cost less.
We would require a training and more than likely the purchase of equipment and adding additional staff to be able to do that.
Commissioner, the equipment, we did an analysis a few years back. The equipment alone is 7 figures to staff out, to properly equip a couple of crews. That's on top of what the manager brought forth about having certified, trained people do this work.
I asked Steve McNellis about that, if you could just do it in-house, and I'm like, they'd have plenty of work for years and years and years to do it, but it just didn't seem cost-effective, although my thinking is, and I spoke to Bill White about it, is that if we buy when we do it, we get to do it at somewhat of a discount because we're obviously a nonprofit, these are for-profit companies, we get a little bit of a rebate there. Anything that they buy, they have to amortize their equipment. We don't, we can just sell it back once it's retired and get money for it. So there are some advantages to doing it, but I guess that he didn't really have the appetite to do that.
What we could do is we could put together, like Steve had talked about, an update of what that crew would look like and what they cost now for tree climbers. And I'm sure if you've seen those individuals climbing trees and that, the risk liability of someone is huge there. So that's something we can put together as an option for you to look at of what it would cost, what the impact would be to the township.
Well, the guys I go to have at my place climbing up the tree, they're not this is not rocket scientists that you send up there.
Well, I would tend to differ because if you see these guys swinging off some of the cranes that are going there and what they're doing with saws and trying to cut that down,
I don't know, just the guy I hire, I don't know.
Well, I think we want our people to be safe and not have liability of sending people that aren't properly trained to do those things. All right, so you feel comfortable we have a way forward?
Thank you.
Is there any other comment from anyone up here? Okay. Reports of standing committees of the board. Do we have any reports? Library, public safety? No report? Okay. New business we already handled. And we will move on to old business now. Update on flood prevention initiatives. Commissioner Abel.
Again, an item I brought up last September. We're nearly at the 1-year anniversary of the August 2018 floods, and just interested if we have any updates on some low-cost initiatives that I proposed back then. The township's put forth the opening up parking lots during major storms, which I think is a good idea, and is appreciated by residents. A couple of the other initiatives that I proposed were a mechanical arm on known flooded streets, so we don't have vehicles driving through. A second initiative was creating flood zones, so there's no parking in areas where we know that the streets are prone to flood. And then a third item was investing in a vehicle where first responders can go into a flooded area easily if called on to do a rescue.
Okay, Commissioner, we have a PowerPoint we put together for you, real brief, 7 slides. We'll go through it. If it's up, Ian?
Ian?
It's there. It shows that we actually need to get new cameras in this.
You know what I'm struck by? I'm looking at this picture we got with the gentleman right out here. We generally don't want people doing this, right?
No.
You can get swept away by going in these knee-high or waist-high floodwaters.
Yes, and just as a brief sidestep under last week's storm, I want to thank the police, Radnor Fire Company for their response, our public works guys for being able to make rescues in some of these areas. When I was standing there, I asked 2 of the people, I said, how did you drive your car into going up the water up to the hood of your car? And they couldn't really answer too well. The one person said, well, I saw the person in front going, so I guess it was okay. The other person they didn't really have much of an answer. So these types of items and you'll see, and I'm not going to sidestep from what Sean Dietrich's put together, but for the first responders that we have, and that they did an outstanding job the other day.
You're going to have to come to
Well, I guess, I'm not, all I'm saying is, people get swept away. It's dangerous to do
And
that.
I'm the guy who was standing there, and the reason I was
Gentlemen,
standing there is to make a
gentlemen.
point that there's that
Okay.
much water coming through my property, sir.
I know,
Okay,
but you don't
it's-
want to get killed making a point.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Well, it kinda
All
is my worry.
Rich, I think we've had enough. I think it's, okay.
I am
All right,
worried.
please. Rich, all right, why don't we get back to,
And before we turn this over, Lieutenant, Bob brought up an issue, and I think it's a point that should be raised. We sit up here and we talk about stormwater projects and how they can help the residents. All the projects we do, it's not going to stop flooding in those major storms. So the stuff that I'm talking about, the low-cost initiatives, they are going to be beneficial in those major storms. So I don't want residents to have any assurances. We sit up here and talk about stormwater projects. It's not stopping the flooding from occurring. So we still need to take care of the residents and our first responders, and these low-cost initiatives are going to go a long way.
Okay, a perfect segue. We want to talk about flood awareness and then how we respond to it. Flood awareness to the public and then how we're responding to it. On August 13th of 2018, which is a year ago tomorrow, we had one of the worst storms, especially in my 25-year career, the worst storm I've ever seen here. Flooding was it was in places we never saw it. We couldn't get to places. I was actually working that day, myself, the manager, all the staff were out. I think we did 28 water rescues that day, by far more. I think we had 6 the other night. So it was a 500-year storm. And all resources, the fire department, us, everybody was absolutely stretched to the limit. And we didn't even get the worst of it. The amount of inches of rain we got compared to Upper Marion, they got really hit hard. If that would have hit us, our flooding would have been exponentially worse than it actually was. Local businesses, private residents, township property received damage ranging from minimal to substantial. So initially, we activated the Emergency Operations Center. And the idea was to try to get, if there was going to be a declaration of disaster declare, we're going to try to get money to flow from the federal government, the state government on down. So to that end, there was community meetings held on August 20th at the Township building for business owners and residents to learn more and to try to understand what they would need to do in order to try to take action to help that. The Board of Commissioners passed a resolution for that declaration of disaster emergency. The governor, Tom Wolf, ultimately received a letter from the commissioners and the manager asking for assistance for our community. And then Delaware County and state held damage workshops to that end. Insofar as what we did in the township manager activated a team to prepare for future flooding events and find out what was our best practices, what worked, what didn't, and let's try to make it right. Training, equipment, and awareness were established for both us and the fire department and public works and the community. And that included, we came up with some initiatives such as our officers, when we were out there that day on the flooding last year, we had no water protection equipment. We had nothing. Most of our officers were going in to dangerous situations. We didn't even have water training. I was I actually had water up over my pistol belt, and I could feel I finally realized after I had the training how actually dangerous that is. And several officers were out there in even deeper water, getting people out of cars and things of that nature. So one of the things we did is we tried to figure out what would be the best solution for us to protect our officers if indeed should they go out, and if they had to go out, how could they equip themselves? When we put together a small list of equipment, we went to the Board of Commissioners to consider funding options, and that also included our fire departments, who also put together some initiatives. Also, as part of that, to the Commissioner's point, was flood awareness and safety mailer that was sent out. We worked on it along with a retired Sergeant Smith, put something together that has now been mailed out to every single resident, or I shouldn't say resident, every household in the township, talking about some safety features such as don't drown, turn around, things of that nature. And finally, anywhere we can take our roadshow, we go. Mr. Norsini, I, and the chief appeared on Radnor 21 to talk about it. Anywhere we can talk about flood safety and what you can do to stay alive, don't get yourself in trouble, and have respect for the water, we have done. Just from the townships on the police side, we have bought 18 packages of equipment that is now in every single car, including our unmarked cars, detective cars, my car, and that contains a vest, a flotation vest. It actually contains 2 flotation vests. So if our officers do go in the water to get somebody out of a car that needs to be rescued immediately, they are to don one themselves and then give one to the person they're rescuing, bring them out, take the vest if there's anybody else, get them under the vest, and then transport them. We also got what's called a throw bag or a rope bag. If somebody's really out in dangerous water where we can't enter, we can throw that out to them. And we also have ring buoys, which are part of that throw bag, which are tied, which is basically like you see on a ship on the side. We can throw that out. If nothing else, it's a way to save them. Also to remind you that they're also convenient for our ice safety down at the pond when those kids break through the ice. We could throw that out there without actually walking out there and making it far worse. And then to coordinate with that, we did a water rescue training. It was put on, it was actually the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission's water rescue for the first responder awareness level. It included, it really helped develop a healthy respect for how much trouble just a little bit of water can actually cause you and how quickly you can get into trouble. Horrific videos of first responders just up to their knees being swept away. Unable to get back, vehicles that look like they can easily make it through, being deeply affected by it. We held 4 workshops that included every single sworn officer of our department, and any officers coming on will have to go through that training immediately upon being hired. We also did 8 public works employees, and they intend to send a whole lot more than we're in the process of scheduling more classes to get as many of them, especially the ones that will be out in that weather, trained on that. For the future, the Radnor Fire Company, Bryn Mawr Fire Company is making presentations to the Board of Commissioners regarding needed water rescue equipment and above what they already have. The Radnor Township Emergency Management, our EOC coordinator, applies for any kind of grants for water rescue and snow response vehicles. To your point, Commissioner, we are actually actively looking at a vehicle that would potentially, at a reduced or no cost to the township, be able to come in, sort of like something if anybody was in the CL, they have 2 of them sitting down there, but something we'd be able to drive through deep water, make rescues, and not put anybody in danger. And lastly, we are have signage on the streets to flood during rain. There's a variety of, we're still researching what would be the best one to benefit the community without impacting the local neighborhoods. And then lastly, not up here, is the parking pass. You mentioned that when in your opening statement. We have that set up. Any resident can come in. They can get a free hang tag parking pass. We will issue it to them. We'll register you, and then they can park in one of our municipal lots free of charge, no issue during a rain event.
As part of that, go ahead. We have, and Sean, I'm asking you to hold that up. These are items that if the board has no problem with, we will begin installing right away. In some of the areas where we know there are flooded areas, that we can actually put something out that actually gives the depth of where this is. Some of the concerns that had gone through internally was, do you put up a sign that says flood zone? And someone, if you do that, their property values might go down because people come in to look at a home and say, well, I'm not moving here because you have that. We thought it'd be better to be able to put levels that show what the depth is, and our hope is that people will realize that if it's up at 2 feet, 1 foot, that they don't drive through. We know there's areas of the township where I'm still scratching my head why people drive into water so deep. So these, if the board has no objection, we will start installing these beginning tomorrow throughout the township in areas where we know there are flooded roadways, low sections, under bridges that are typical areas where you have significant runoff that create those flooding problems. Sorry, Commissioner.
No, I appreciate that. And what, I didn't hear anything about the arm. Is there an update on looking at a mechanical arm similar to what they have at the shore?
Those are ones that we've been looking at. Initial comments would those be something that would be like on a Wi-Fi type system that could be sent down if the impact, or if it actually would manually have to come down, be brought down. The concern was manually being brought down. When do you send somebody to close the road off? And if you never get the impact and the road's closed, then all of a sudden you get people that are upset saying, why do you have these down? Or can someone just come by and lift them? So I think that's something that the superintendent had looked at of what is the best way to activate these? Is it something where they're all automatically a button that sits somewhere and these gates come down with flashing lights, almost what railroads are, where you actually close off roadways to be able to do that. But then also too is in some of the areas, and I know the one day in your ward, people were actually, there was multiple areas of flooding and people were going around in a circle saying, well, I can't go this way now. You've got me stopped this way. Is to be able to come up and notify that in water events, this is your route in which you need to go to get out. So that's something that we continue to work on and see how is the best option for us to go, and that's something we will bring back to the board on the water rescue vehicle. But I think, John, you're going to be getting something from police about the legal requirements from getting that from surplus, federal surplus. And then also, too, we'll make a presentation upon these gates, and we should have pictures, photos for you of these signs being installed.
Okay, I appreciate it. And I don't want to put Mr. McGuire on the spot, but on the arm issue, is that something that the fire department would support?
Obviously, we wouldn't say no to anything that is going to help people stay away from flooded areas. One of the current concerns we might have just with a specific one, South Wayne Avenue, since we know that floods out and it's directly in front of the firehouse, are vehicles getting in and out of the building or up and down the roadway, that could be a concern. I could bring it back to our officers and discuss it, and we could definitely get back to you with what our recommendation would be, or at least our opinion.
Well, Bob, I would just hope that they're part of the discussion when you bring it back to the board formally.
Yeah, we will ask them to be involved with us on making that determination. That's going to be a key part.
So instead of an arm, so it's funny, Lieutenant Dietrich, they mentioned sea aisle, so I know those vehicles you're talking about, they're parked like right when you come into town, and they're huge. They're like, they look amphibious, I'm not sure. But what they did is they installed up and down the main thoroughfare in the city, and I'm sure Lieutenant Dietrich, if you've been down there, they've got the signs now. They're solar powered.
Flashing.
Yeah, then they say that the area ahead is flooded because there's certain areas that flood out, and then certain areas that don't, where the island's higher. So, is something like that an option instead of an arm?
We will look at that to be an option. It's just I'm not sure people would actually pay attention to that and still drive through. So I think
So-
you're going to have to physically
And-
put a barrier, because we have people now that drive through caution tape when there are power lines down, and they don't care. They actually just drive and snap right through it. So some physical barrier that it's impossible to get through, I think, is probably going to be that option.
Okay, I hear you. So the other thing that I will suggest, so last Wednesday, Thursday, whenever the bad storm was that hit Newtown Square particularly hard, you were very good at letting me know. You were telling me and letting me know where you were and what was flooded out. Basically, every street to my home was flooded out. So I was on the Schuylkill worrying about being flooded out on the Schuylkill, which is always scary. But I thought, how am I going to get home? Right now, everything is flooded. But reasonably in my head, you know, eventually it will recede and I'll be able to get home. You know, it's the creeks, they will recede, and they usually do pretty quickly. Is there a place like that you would recommend? I actually thought, well, maybe I'll just go and to the Township building and hang out there, but this floods here, so I wasn't sure if that was flooded. Are there places in the Township that are, you know, if people find themselves in that situation, like they know they can't get home, or they, like you said, are driving around and there's nowhere, is there somewhere that you would recommend people go? And I'm not saying you have to tell me right now, but maybe that's part of the education. You know, you need to go to the high school. The parking lot at the high school is high ground. Go to, you know, I'm not sure where. Or go to the corporate center, that's high ground, and wait it out. And then also, is there some sort of way to let, I know you guys are really good, Molly was really good about putting out areas that were flooded. The police, very good, you know, on social media and things like that. You know, is there some way that people can expect that there be a communication as soon as you guys know, as best you can, get it out there, because I know you're busy responding, to let people know, you
Right,
know,
and
like
that's
don't
through-
go on Brimmer Avenue, it's flooded out.
Right, through Facebook and social media be our big area if people have that opportunity to do that. Given what occurred last week, it's hard for us to make a determination where to go, because you look at the southeast quadrant, and like the lieutenant said, and what we saw is that's an area that never saw that significant amount of water. We actually had a police car blocking certain traffic, and because it was coming down so hard, the vehicle actually got surrounded by water. It didn't take water in, but it was on high ground, but it was surrounded. The vehicle could not move. So it's those items we would hate to be able to tell somebody, go to this site, and then all of a sudden, like, oh my goodness, I can't get there now, so now where do we go? Our hope is that, I hate to say this, is common sense sometimes would come into play, that if I can't get a certain place, I'm just going to go somewhere. Because surprisingly, when it stops raining, the water moves out of here very quickly. It does. It's that time of when it's coming down. And what we saw last week in the 3 to 4 inches of rain, that's a significant amount of water coming down. And it's very scary of what that is. And especially in those areas where homes sit in certain areas, like your home that sits there, the impact is significant. Ithan Valley Creek was like Whitewater Rapids, and it looked like Niagara Falls coming over that area. And that is going to be a issue here because the water came close to the road, but the erosion is significant in that area, that if it's not started to be addressed, we're going to run into losing that road. So again, that's something that will more than likely come back to the board for your consideration, to ask our federal representatives to refer this to the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay. Does anyone have any other comments?
Yeah, I would, it's so disturbing for me when we have flooding pictures nearly every meeting now. We're talking about flooding, and we're now like Sea Isle, like an ocean island, barrier island. We're putting up signs, and yet we still won't enforce our stormwater ordinance to minimize. So we encourage flooding, and then we want to spend money and buy vehicles and procedures and put out signs to stop people from going where it's flooded. It's so disheartening. And we have a dam that obviously was attended before and is not. And what we do is just, well, we'll let it happen, and then we'll just try to respond to it instead of taking the steps to prevent it. So, very disheartening. I don't see how those signs are going to help property values. If a flood zone sign is not going to help property values, I don't think that's going to make it any better. I don't think that helps either. And also, if this is a 1 in a 500 chance of this happening, we're going through a lot for a 1 in 500 chance. Is it 1 in 500? Is it 1 in 100? Or is it 1 in 20? If it's 1 in 20, that's when we should notify people, don't you think? If it's 1 in 500, is this a thing that you want to have out there every day of the year for something that happens one every 500 times? I'm not convinced that that the actions being taken are commensurate with what is happening, and certainly I am convinced that we are exacerbating a bad situation by our policies on this board.
Just to go along with that, and you know, I appreciate your point. What I can say personally, you know, as a fire chief, as a resident of the township, and I don't know whether they would agree with me or not. Hopefully they would. Whatever the chances are, there's 100% chance that anytime somebody calls 911 because they're stuck in water, either myself or one of my firefighters or EMTs has to go in and get them. So anything we can do to keep people from going into these areas, and hopefully common sense would take over.
Well, why don't we say flood zone then?
Semantics can, you know, that can be up to you guys. I'm just saying for us, any deterrent we have where I can say, where I don't have to put or order somebody to go into water, to pull somebody out of a car, out of a flood zone, whatever it happens to be, I'm all for that.
Again, if safety and cost is no object, then why don't we have arms to go down and stop the people from going in there that are automatically triggered? If it's a flood zone and it can happen at any time, why don't we say this is a flood zone? And if houses are repeatedly getting flooded, we should condemn the houses and restore it back to an area that is naturally able to handle and keep the people out of those areas.
Can I make a public comment here? Our house and the farmhouse were built in 1780. Okay?
I know, and it didn't flood then.
We were well, they were never flooded, and we've lived there since 1967. And the reason they're getting flooded is because Newtown Township is not doing the proper ordinances with stormwater. The water from Green Country is running illegally directly into Green Country. It is the lake at Earls Lake. It is illegally. I had 2 geologists just study this over the weekend for me. They did all kinds of area topographical. They said, "What the hell's going on in your townships? Your board is at fault because they are not they're not enforcing the laws." The stormwater above us in Newtown Township is running into this Sawmill Parkway, or whatever it's called here behind my house, the Sawmill Run. It's illegally running in from all those new houses that were built, including the 10,000 square foot house that was just built next to me. Has anybody been back there to check that Big McMansion on David D'Agostino's property? I just drove by there. I'm looking for the French drains. Where is that stormwater going? I would also like to know, I want to call Steve Norsini. I'm willing to put more French drains in my property. If I can help with stormwater runoff, I'd like the township to go around. Every single person should be educated about this. At first, we had to put one in. It looks rather ugly next to the driveway. We had gravel driveway. We're getting old. We can't deal with it, so we put a macadam driveway in. And obviously, we lost impervious ground. So the township made us put a French drain in. And at first, I said, oh, that'll never work. Well, guess what? It works brilliantly. It collects all the water that's running down from that hill at our driveway. So I said to my husband, let's put more of these French drains in. And every property in the township needs to be looking at this. It's stormwater runoff, and this group is not properly enforcing it. And that's part of the problem.
Absolutely. We waive every time there's a waiver. We grant it.
Criticize me. Let me tell you why this picture is here with us in the water. Because our house, we are going to lose our house. And what rehab are documenting this legally to show that we have been trying to get help here. The water, the storm had subsided, by the way. We did not walk into raging water. That's at the end of the rainstorm. All right? That was not taken during the raging water. We're not that stupid. And thank you.
My only concern is the safety of the residents, right?
All right.
So
I thought your idea was great. If it's all it takes is to pump down, to get an electric pump to lower that water level, now that's a solution that is viable and affordable.
Yeah.
They can't afford to fix the dam, but we could get the water level lowered. And that's something that I think this township could put pressure on Green Country. They own it. If not, if I have to file a lawsuit against Green Country, I'm sorry, that's what I guess I'll have to do and pay for it on my own dime. But it's also affecting you and your benefit. And you should be able, I'd like to know who's the legal counsel in this township. They should be able to file a lawsuit against the private owners that own that, which is Green Country, and force them to lower the level of that water. That's what can be done, can it? Is there a legal recourse? It is not the state. You can't sue a township or a state, but it's privately owned. What legal recourse do we have if it's owned by Green Country? Right.
Yeah.
Not to force them to fix it. They don't have the money, but to lower the water level. That should be an inexpensive fix. Let's try the valve and see if it works. I mean, there is some common sense here, and I think it's great you have all these things to help the people, but I agree, let's get to the root cause of it. And part of it is groundwater. So, and not enforcing your rules. I totally agree with you. So thank you. We appreciate your time here. And the only people, by the way, that have taken action over there are my husband and I, by bringing in boulders to shore up our house. Nobody else has done anything. And we're just private citizens paying for it out of our own pocket. We pay our taxes, and we pay plenty of them. So, I mean, I think it's time for some government agencies to do something instead of talking about it and pointing fingers. We're sick of it. This is why people don't like government. It's infuriating. And I thank you all. You know, I'm going to go to work myself tomorrow. I'm picking somebody up at 7. I'm putting in a full day just like everybody else, and it's very annoying to be paying for this and not getting services. So thank you all. God bless.
Thank you, Mary Jo. All right, is there any additional comments on the stormwater? Okay. Final public comment. Anyone for public comment? No? Okay, then I will call for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night. Thank you all.